Yes, this would be the biggest embassy in Europe if approved, if Starmer bows down to Beijing, as these protesters are saying. Behind me you can see nobody wants this.
No depression at borders! We know that we have to stand up to the abuses of China. And what worries me is that we have a government right now that seems to be scared of China.
What are you doing here at the protest? That's an interesting sign you've got there. Clearly you're not a fan of our Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Why is that?
He's kowtowing to the Chinese government, right? A dictator regime.
Robert Jenrick defected to Reform yesterday. He called the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch a leader with no backbone. She's obviously shown up here today and done a speech. It's kind of unprecedented to have that sort of flagrant support. What did you think about her speech and her backing this?
I think any party backing our cause, like going against the building of the embassy, I'd say we welcome them.
Why are you here today?
So I'm Tibetan and I'm here to oppose the Chinese mega embassy being built here. Unfortunately, we think the UK government might allow this to happen, and I think it sends the wrong message to people who have been oppressed by the Chinese government, who are still being continuously oppressed in free countries. There are lots of Chinese decisions which are being followed by Chinese police states.
Now, we know that there are plainclothes Chinese policemen potentially in the crowd, so a lot of them want to stay anonymous, which is very understandable. Why are you here today?
Because it's very simple. It's no mega embassy, and this is absolutely unacceptable because this is a very peak area, and I don't think any one of the country they will have choose one of the peak area, prime area, and make it to their one of the I think it's the biggest embassy in Europe. So this is absolutely unacceptable.
This government is engaging with China confidently and pragmatically and challenging them where we need.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. On a quiet news day. Not much to talk about. We'll just have a little bit of, play a little bit of background music, some bird song, and we'll just just have a potter around the garden maybe later. Not much to talk about. No, of course, I am lying because there is plenty to talk about. If you do miss anything on the show, if you missed anything from what I must say, rip-roaring shows the last couple of days, do go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we will, of course, be discussing Donald Trump telling Keir Starmer to straighten out Britain. Keir Starmer's trading national security for a better trading relationship with Beijing. Yeah, he approved that new mega Chinese super embassy, and imagine everyone's surprised when a day later it's confirmed that he is on a trip to China at the end of the month. Imagine that. Since coming to power, Labour has handed 1.5 million more Brits benefits with no requirement to look for work. 1.5 million more people in the last 18 months genuinely unable to work. I don't believe this for a moment. You're swinging the lead, and we're allowing you to do that. This has got to stop. Plus, talking about special needs, head teachers have told the government to stop siphoning off budgets from mainstream schooling to pay for special needs funding, 2/3 of which, by the way, is transport costs. We're going to be talking about all of that, plenty more besides. And when I say plenty more besides, there really is a lot more to talk about. Donald Trump currently on his way to Davos. I'm sure you would have already heard his Air Force One got some sort of mechanical fault, electrical fault. He had to turn back after an hour. He's got onto another plane. Doesn't matter what plane he's on. It's always called Air Force One. But he's on his way a bit late. But he is due to speak at about 1:30. God knows what he's going to say. I think one thing we can be definitely sure about, whatever the script says, he's going to go on for longer and he's going to go off script. So good luck, Ian Collins, with that show. Good luck to you for listening as well to that. Joining me for the chat today, I'm delighted to say, is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator, looking, if I may say, very dashing today.
But sans aviateur, so, you know, I could have been looking more dashing.
For those who did not complete their French GCSE, he does not have the matching blue shades that Macron wore.
But I really wish I did. I'd look good.
That would be, that's a look. I have to say, he sported that look very well. If it look as a 5 foot, well, just under 5'11" woman, I've got to say, Macron, you know, if he could put an extra foot on, then maybe more attractive. But he looked rather cool. Everyone's talking about it. But he had a manky eye. He had a bloodshot eye. A lot of talk about whether Brigitte had anything to do with this look. We've seen it on camera already.
Yes, we have. But also, to be fair, you know, talking about him being short, he would not be the first short French president who has, so to speak, punched above his weight when it comes to the First Lady. I'm, of course, talking to Nicolas Sarkozy and whatever on earth was going on there with Carla Bruni, who was well out of his league, or would have been if he wasn't, in fact, the actual president of France. Yes. But I digress.
Because I think we may be going off topic. But that said, Emmanuel Macron was definitely a part of the jibes that Donald Trump... I mean, goodness me, he had a press conference yesterday. What was it, 2 hours or something? I thought it was already on the way to Davos. It wasn't. He surprised press conference, which happened in the White House press briefing room, and covered a lot of topics, a lot about home domestic affairs, because, you know, things are not going economically that well for the president. But he was also asked about, and we've got a little clip here, he's also asked about his relationship with both Keir Starmer, you know, that bromance, and that romance with Emmanuel Macron. And here is what Donald Trump had to say.
Get a little bit rough when they're, you know, when I'm not around, but when I'm around, they treat me very nicely. And, you know, I like both of them. They're both liberal. They've got to straighten out their countries. You can't, you know, London is having a lot of problems, and if you look at Paris, got a lot of problems. They have two problems: immigration and energy. They got to stop with the windmills, and they got to go back like UK has an unbelievable asset called the North Sea. Norway uses it, makes a fortune. They have a better section of it, and they don't do it.
I mean, he's not wrong. He's not wrong, is he? No. Benedict, before I get your thoughts on this, I would add in crime and welfare as well. You know, let's add culture wars and all of that. But yeah, you know, immigration, massive impact on the economy, of course, a massive impact on our culture and housing and education. I mean, huge, and on crime. But Donald Trump has told Keir Starmer, OK, and Macron as well, we don't care about France. He's told Keir Starmer to straighten out Britain and said London has a lot of problems. What is your reaction to that? Do you think, thank you for telling the truth to our Prime Minister, do you think, you know what, no offence, I may or may not like you, Donald Trump, but don't give your opinions on our country. It's none of your sodding business. I mean, let's face it, we weren't that keen on Obama giving his tuppence worth during the Brexit referendum, were we? What do you want to say about this? And what do you think should be done? And do you think he's identified the right problems? Maybe there's something else. Maybe he hasn't done the full list. I mean, there's a long list of problems here. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Benedict, is he right? Should he have said it?
He is right, and he's perfectly within his rights to say it. I mean, if we were going to get a little bit sort of picky, you could look at just about every major American city and say, well, you've got all of the exact same problems on a much larger scale when it comes to things like stabbings and shootings and illegal migration. That's why he's having to send authorities into all of these cities.
At least he's trying to do something about illegal immigration.
At least, having been elected on that basis, he is doing what he promised to do.
And
which, of
drill,
course,
baby, drill.
Which, of course, famously in this country, you vote for whoever and they'll lie to say whatever to get in power, and then they do the exact opposite. And I mean, that's just a massive practical joke on all of us. It's been going on for about 30 or 40 years. But on the subject of energy, he's absolutely right. And the funny thing is, of course, energy underpins almost all aspects of the economy, and that obviously affects everything else.
Someone should tell the government that.
I mean, honestly, it's just beyond frustrating. It's beyond frustrating that you and I have been having the same discussion for close to a decade now. So, you know, it's going to keep on going.
We're not that old.
No,
We're not that old.
Close to a decade, but, you know, not quite a decade. But at some point it will have been well over a decade, and then it'll be 2 decades, and we'll still be talking about Ed Miliband and his wind farms and his solar panels, even as the rest of the world has long since moved on, and Britain and Europe, by extension, becomes poorer and poorer, because we still seem to believe in this outdated idea that you can magically fix things with, you know, entirely green power, not just green power,
by the way,
power.
And also, by the way, a lot of based on sort of batteries that don't exist yet, and importing the whole thing from China.
Oh, don't worry, we'll get there at some point.
Ed Miliband actually was the net zero insanity secretary. Again, my always been, he cannot be the energy security and net zero secretary, whichever way round it is. It's one or the other. But he was doing the media rounds. I mean, I don't know why the media interviewing him didn't just wrap him up in cotton wool and say, there, have some cocoa, Ed, instead of challenging him. Not one mention the small matter of Nesso. You know, the government quango that said only a month or so ago that the cost of net zero was £4.5 trillion. Let me just check my back pocket. Oh, I don't think we've got £4.5 trillion going spare for this policy. And the fact that there was some challenge, at least, over the fact that this is a 15 billion... Again, we haven't got a spare 15 billion quid either. 15 billion quid for solar panels and heat pumps in homes. Most homes won't do any of this. I live in a flat. Where am I putting the solar panels in my flat? I'm on the ground floor. Absolute waste of money. I'm not having a heat pump over my dead body. You're forcing me to have a heat pump. We're having to pay people, subsidise them, like to the tune of like £7,000 for them to buy a heat pump, which still costs more than about twice what a boiler would cost. No one who is struggling financially, which is, by the way, the whole country, is going, other than Labour donors, is going to waste the money on this. They don't work properly. And where are we getting the solar panels and the heat pumps and all that? Oh, we're moving to electric vehicles. Where are we getting them all from? From China. China is making this stuff. How are they making it cheaply? Because it's all subsidised. And which energy they're using? They're using coal-fired energy. And we know there's all these issues about kill switches in EVs and in the solar panel and the farms and things like that. This is, I mean, I use the word insane a lot. It's not just insane, it's dangerous.
It is.
It's national suicide.
It's really, it would be amusing if it wasn't so serious, but at the same time as we're talking about, now Europe is starting to talk about strategic autonomy from the United States because, maybe they aren't quite as friendly as we thought, and we're sat here selling our souls to China, but also India. Yesterday, Ursula von der Leyen announced that they're going to strike a fantastic new deal with India, and you're sat there thinking, what, as opposed to the US? How is that better? How does that make anything better? India is famous, actually, for its business practices, the exact same as China, which is that they infiltrate, they take all the intellectual property, they take it for themselves, and they sack everybody and hire
Also, a very, very
people.
big country, far bigger than the US. It's the most populous country in the world. But most of them ain't that rich. They're not buying your goods.
They're not rich. They're also not friendly. We seem to have this idea that because it's
they're on Russia's side.
Yeah, they absolutely are very hostile towards us and towards the United States. They like to pick and play both sides, a bit like a lot of the Gulf states, a bit like China used to do in order to get to where it wants to be. They do not look at us as some sort of benevolent
form of
colonialism.
What did you make? Ursula von der Leyen, again, she's an utter waste of space as a woman. She's literally just and I'm saying this to a bad hairdo, and that's me saying it with my hair, a bad hairdo, in an empty vessel. But she was talking about an independent Europe sort of going it alone and building themselves up. Well, that's fine, but you have to dump net zero. You're going to have to put up the borders on the immigration and tackle it, and you're going to have to actually start investing in defence, because the reason why everyone is clutching their pearls over Greenland is because if Donald Trump decides he wants Greenland, he can sodding well have Greenland, and there's nothing that Europe can do about it. Oh, by the way, if America pulls out of Ukraine, now I've got regular military and very knowledgeable guests on the show who say no, we can help defend Ukraine. We haven't got the will or the way. I simply don't believe that.
No, we can't.
But I mean, Donald Trump is telling us to fix, or telling Keir Starmer to fix his country. That's all very well. I say Donald Trump's got a lot of problems, but do you think Keir Starmer's listening? Because Donald Trump's going to land in Davos today. He's going to be speaking at 1:30. No plans yet for Starmer to go to Davos, even though we knew that Donald Trump was going to be there, because it was like the day after his inauguration last time when he spoke on video call to them, and he said, I'll be there next year. So if the most powerful man in the world is going to be there, you should be there. We were saying on the show yesterday, like, all the big cheeses are going to be there this week. But from, he's a big cheese. But he goes other years when it's just someone from, Mozambique who's there.
I was going to say, Keir Starmer's never seen an international conference he didn't want to fly immediately to, rather than be in the UK. It's just this awkward one. And it's because a lot of the sheen has come off all of this. Donald Trump, I think, Starmer thought one of his few saving graces was that he was this sort of Trump whisperer, that he got in his ear, that they got on, and that Lammy and Vance got on. And now, actually, it's been shown up for exactly what it is, which is that Donald Trump will be friendly to you when suits him,
and when,
he will throw you
there's
under
a
the bus
royal
when
trip
not.
on the cards.
Yeah, of course.
We should have held that over him a little bit longer, I think.
Well, I mean, we should have done, but ultimately...
Should have been dangled there.
I think...
Just out of reach, that little carrot, just out of reach each time.
Even so, I still think it's one of those where you can't pretend for a second to genuinely have any kind of influence over the President of the United States. That wouldn't matter if it was Trump or anybody else.
No, the Americans don't have the influence. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, doesn't have any influence. I can imagine, genuinely, I remember the State Department and most of the Defence Department, other than Pete Hegseth, the War Secretary, isn't he now?
Yes.
I think every time Donald Trump speaks, they're just, oh God, what are we going to do now? You know there'll be back channels saying, look, don't worry, we'll sort this out. A lot of people will be going, I don't really care about Greenland. It's a fair point, but I think we should absolutely care, with the threat from Russia and all the other threats we've got in the world, about the breakup of NATO.
Well, honestly, when people turn around and they say, I don't care, I understand if it's because they've got a lot of things to worry about in their own life, but the attitude, which is that the rest of the world doesn't concern, we should solely focus on what's happening within our own territory. I mean, it's an idiotic view, because the world doesn't just leave you alone. The United States, the most powerful country that has ever existed, has on multiple occasions tried to go, we don't care about the rest of the world, we're going to put up the borders, and the world turns up at its doorstep.
Every president is elected as an isolationist president, every single one.
Yeah, you don't get to say, actually, the world doesn't exist beyond my four walls and that it's up to it to do whatever it wants.
Yeah, we know what Ukraine did to our energy prices.
Absolutely.
That led basically, I mean, let's be honest, to a fall of a government, because Liz Truss probably wouldn't have fallen
if she hadn't been stupid enough to go, energy price guarantees. Yeah, that was really smart. Multiple other things, but even so.
Every prime minister of whatever party who was in power at that point would have done the same thing.
They would have done, because they were already stupid. And I don't know
what
if
else
you know
are you going to do?
Julia, but
People
we keep on doing.
can't afford you can't live in a one-bedroom flat and have a £4,000 energy bill.
But you also can't afford to guarantee everybody's energy bills if there is literally no end to the potential.
But here's
what
the
you
thing.
do is you source energy from elsewhere, which, what do we have? The North Sea. It's made of oil and gas, literally.
Absolutely.
That's the foolishness of all of this.
I tear my hair out. I genuinely tear my hair out of this. But we've already discussed that Ed Miliband. And again, I'm genuinely, if you watch him, especially, he makes more sense if you watch him without the sound on, not going to lie. But he looks properly messianic. Bug.
He makes more sense if you put actually dub over the top Beaker from the Muppets when he's talking. Actually, then you start to go, I see it now. I see the vision. Yeah, exactly. Try it, somebody. Honestly, it's great fun.
I am that age. I got that reference. Thank you for that. Let's talk about matters closer to home. Cross the river. I always point that literally just over there on the other side of the Tower of London. And there will be this big Chinese mega embassy, the super embassy that MI5 and MI6 has said, well, we can't really protect everything. We're going to have to move a load of communication cables, because obviously the Chinese are going to want to get to those. We've got redacted plans. There'll be people are talking about not only mega computers down there, spy agencies, basically listening into all these cables. As my guest was pointing out yesterday, being able to just sort of being a nanosecond ahead of those cables hitting the city, being able to make trillions and bust our economy, cut them off at any time. Police cells, effectively Chinese torture cells, prison cells. God knows what's going to happen. I don't think you should put anything past the Chinese. I mean, they've abducted people from London streets on plain view daylight into their grounds. This is an enemy, hostile, murderous, traitorous, autocratic state. We should not be giving them anything. So we're giving them this embassy against the wishes of the local people, local planning department, etc., etc. And knocked me down with a feather. Imagine my surprise when the confirmation came this morning that Keir Starmer's trip to China is now going to happen at the end of the month. Because we knew if he didn't approve the embassy, the trip wouldn't happen. Well, the answer to that is, then I ain't visiting China.
Well, you'd hope it would be the answer, but sadly, because our country has decided that as its economic policy, it's going to do this thing called degrowth, and it's just going to sort of, trade with everybody else, we, sadly, have invited these people in. We are now, sadly, beholden to them. We have got them, a bit like with the Qataris as well. These people are too deeply embedded now into our state for us to just rip things up unilaterally.
In this building?
It'll be very, very painful for us to do that. And our government, successive governments, let's also be clear here, Conservative Party,
And by the way,
you know,
Farage gets in, Reform are going to carry it on because they won't be able to. You can't rip the whole thing up in one go.
You can't, and there is simply not the bravery of any politician in this country to actually recognise what any of these states are, which is, again, as I said with India, hostile. I wouldn't necessarily say enemy, but hostile. They are looking to take what they can get from us, and they do not care. Well, I mean, the key thing is, I'd say that the difference between the Chinese and, say, the Soviet Union is the Chinese are not interested in imposing Chinese communism on us, whereas the Soviet Union is very much intent on world domination. What the Chinese want is to control their entire sphere of influence and have enough leverage over everybody else to make sure we can't interfere with it.
Here's
they want to be able to twist our arms.
Here's something that nasty autocratic states do, is they either don't have elections or they fix elections. Well, it's fascinating here, Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, apparently saying that a Farage government would be fascist. Now, I think everyone should stop using stupid words that they don't really understand. I don't like people saying Holocaust, genocide, fascist. If it's not actually that thing, don't use those words, don't cheapen them. We've got those words for a reason because they're supposed to actually explain something. But I mean, what do fascist governments do? One of the things they do is they're not keen on democracy. They're not keen on elections. Yes, the Nazis got in through an election, but then they fixed things so it didn't happen again. But Reform UK has now got the legal go-ahead for a legal challenge. It's going to be not till next month against Labour's plans to cancel those local elections in May. Almost 4 million people are going to miss out on those local elections. Very interesting. The Commons speakers, Lindsay Hoyle, who of course was originally a Labour MP, he becomes neutral when he's the Speaker. But he has said he thinks that local elections should go ahead. There's no doubt at all, this is just an outrageous attempt to subvert democracy. No one believes for a nanosecond that if Labour were ahead in the polls, that these councils would, most of them being Labour councils, but there's some Tories as well and some Lib Dems, that they would be just amazingly unable with all the changes and the bureaucratic changes, all that paperwork, to be able to hold an election. And the argument that it's expensive to do it and then they'll just have to do it again in a year's time. Well, again,
oh no, do democracy again.
It's like having by-elections, for the likes of the two MPs, Jenrick and who's the other?
Andrew Rossendale.
Rossendale. So that they should. I told them both they should have by-elections. We haven't got a general election for 3 years. They should absolutely hold by-elections. I've been all of my views are based on democratic accountability, and that's vital. But absolutely, Reform should challenge this. I'm all in favour of this. I think it's an absolute outrage. This is not letting people vote because they know perfectly well that they're going to be absolutely trounced in those elections.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I do agree with you, and I think that anybody who just throws around the word fascism should be able to quote what Mussolini wrote in his doctrine about it. At least if you think you know, then read it. Of course, though, if you were to read it, Lisa Nandy would call you a fascist. So, then it would sort of come full circle because, she
That's worse than having a Douglas Murray book in your house if the police come round.
Let's be clear. These people don't read anything at the best of times. They don't even read The Guardian. They just look at the headline and go, fantastic. But honestly,
I would advise only reading their headlines rather than actually reading the article.
The headlines are the best bit. They're the most amusing sort of way to condense the thing. But the thing is, you're right, and Reform, they're right to be, displeased, so to speak, about this, because it is that a lot of these councils are running scared. But I think, and I've always thought this, the whole point is people are not stupid. They can see what's happening. Voters who care about local issues sitting there going, well, I've got a local election coming up soon. Oh, hang on, wait, it's been postponed. They are not stupid. They can see what's going on. This makes it more likely, long term, that more people will get fed up at a local level and go, right, well, if I wasn't going to vote Reform this time, I'm really going to vote for it next time. Because if you're telling me you're too incapable to deal with this job that you've actively sought in a year's time, I'm going to go for the other people. It just makes it more likely we're going to get Reform wins across the board. And the fact that these people can't see that is a sign of how stupid they are.
And in my view, we've had so many changes. I mean, again, if you care about your bins, you know me, I could do 3 hours on the bins every single day. You care about 20-mile-per-hour zones. Apparently they've now made London the slowest capital city to get around in the world. And if you care about these issues, you care about crime and things like that, you need to vote. This whole sodding voting, maybe in a general election, and only about 25, 30, sometimes 40% of people voting in their local elections. You need to vote in every election, otherwise you don't get the right to moan. I might start making that a rule. Did you vote in your local election? Then you can't talk about that topic. I do not want to limit your calls. You get to have your say, but it really does matter. Interestingly, Kemi Badenoch has become more popular than Nigel Farage for the first time in over a year. I say more popular. Her net unfavourability ratings are not as bad as his.
It's a bit of a trick,
no one's
isn't
is as bad as Keir Starmer's. I mean, 75% of people don't rate. And we were laughing yesterday. 18% of people have a favourable view of Keir Starmer. I'm assuming they're in public sector jobs they're all resident doctors who had a pay rise. They're train drivers, or there's 1.5 million more people who've been claiming benefits and don't have to look for a job. Because you'd absolutely have a favourable view of him, wouldn't you? But interesting, Kemi's, I thought, and I wrote this in my Sun column last week, I thought the biggest winner last week from that debacle over Robert Jenrick's departure was Kemi Badenoch, because she was brutal and decisive, and and Tory voters in particular very happy with her performance right now.
I think it gives her... I mean, it removes the only viable rival as much as anything else. So it does mean that she has breathing space. And this whole time, one of the major issues about the Tory party is a lack of stability. You know, quite aside from all the rest of it, people look at it and go, well, I can't trust it to know who's going to be the leader. Well, now you can be pretty certain Kemi's going to be there for some time. It was decisive. That's certainly true. It also means, ultimately, that the idea that there's an ideological schism in the party is gone. It's Kemi or nothing, which actually I think gives a lot of former Tory voters, or people who are disaffected, but who wouldn't quite be prepared to vote for reform, that might have gone to the Lib Dems or whoever, they might be looking at it and going, OK, I can tolerate voting Conservative the next general election. It does strengthen not just the Tories, it actually strengthens the right more generally, because it brings back to the Tories voters who wouldn't have gone to reform. They're not losing those voters to them anyway. So I do think actually it's a net positive, strangely enough. Of course, it's good for reform as well. It means finally that there's some sort of succession plan, and it's a big name and all of that. It's a vote of confidence, but still,
I think there's lots of
quietly,
people in reform who would be very unhappy about Robert Jenrick.
Lots of other people.
But I mean, but Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, we had him on the show yesterday, and he was saying that I think this strengthens the move to, the right to unite.
Which
I think is not than unite the right, which is the idea that they can actually go into the election not with a pact, not with a plan for a coalition, wanting to both be the majority, but basically say, but to stop the bunch of lunatics and Greens and everything on the left getting into government in some very badly named progressive alliance, that they would work together, which I think is what most voters, it may not be some diehards don't want to do it on either side, it's what most voters on the right would expect them to do, and they will do. Who are we kidding? Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. By the way, speaking at Davos, the Chancellor Rachel Reeves says Britain will not be buffeted around by American threats. I don't know if this is
which Muppet was that?
Yeah, exactly. To levy fresh tariffs as part of its pursuit of Greenland. I've been given a whole load of. I can't bring myself to even bother reading it, because it's utterly irrelevant what the Chancellor of the Exchequer says, whether she's saying it to us in a budget or whether she's saying it at Davos. Utterly irrelevant, because it won't mean anything. She's an absolute no mark. No one cares. I want to know what you think about what Donald Trump has said, though, telling Keir Starmer and indeed Macron to straighten out their countries. He also saying that London has a lot of problems. What's your reaction? Are you angry at him for saying it, or is it fair that he says it? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Love to hear your thoughts on that Chinese embassy. Oh, what a surprise. Keir Starmer is heading off to China next week right now. That reform legal challenge over those council elections being cancelled. And also Labour handing no need to work, no problem at all. You just go on benefits to another 1.5 million more people with no requirement for them ever to look for work again. We are in insane territory. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of it. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's take a couple of calls before we go to our next guest. James is on the line. He's in Devon. James, you want to talk about the China threat. I mean, I have to say, I'm absolutely stunned, actually, how many people, I absolutely agree with them, are horrified by this Chinese mega embassy decision.
Yeah, Julia, I'm just a normal person, right? And I've just sat down and had a little look at this. And, you know, the Chinese, what Donald Trump forgot to mention, is the Chinese bought and paid, got our ex-British Prime Minister, David Cameron, to go work for a British-Chinese investment firm to go in to go further China's Belt and Road project they've got going. Next thing we know, the government starts basically getting awash with money, and we think, oh, let's have the Chinese in our 5G structure. I tell you what, let's have them in our nuclear infrastructure.
I mean, they actually thought that was a good idea. Terrifying.
Yeah, thought it was a great idea, and then the next thing you know, this mega embassy, which, you know, right close to our data lines from the City of London, for crying out loud. Oh, the Chinese won't do it because it'd be illegal. Yeah, really? And what the Foreign Office forgets to tell us and the British people is the reason why they're giving this embassy the go-ahead is because the British Foreign Office has asked Beijing to go for a new embassy in China, and they've turned around and said no because we've said no to this.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, this has gone through with 234 extra rooms. We know what happened up in the consulate up in China. These are going to be used as basically torture holding.
No reason to think they wouldn't be. Absolutely.
Yeah, because the Chinese are so good on human rights, Julia. Basically, what's happened here, the Chinese have bought our politicians and the due date is coming in and they could do nothing about it.
100% correct. Benedict?
I think that's about right. I mean, the thing is, even if it's not direct, it's through everything else. It's investment in institutions or companies or property. It's buying up.
They bought up our universities wholesale.
In much the same way, of course, as the Russians did when all of the dirty money was sloshing around that country. Actually, it's how these places
Russia
operate.
bought up the banks. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You absolutely nailed it, James. I wish most of our politicians, I wish anyone working in our Foreign Office could have such an obviously clear analysis, basically looking at the facts. Appreciate that call. Thank you. Let's talk to Herbie, who is in Harrow. Good morning to you, Herbie. You want to talk about net zero, which again, when we talk about easy international affairs and Greenland and Ukraine and Chagos Islands and everything, it is actually related because it's about our ability to actually have a viable economy and a viable defence system.
Yes, good morning, Julia. Julia, I'm as depressed as the weather today with all this that's going on. For God's sake, they're giving 10 billion of interest-free loans to people that will be in debt forever. They will never be able to recoup what they're going to spend out on the increase in their charges.
Just to say, this is the Warm Homes Plan, and it's 15 billion quid, and a load of it is interest-free loans and basically subsidising people to get heat pumps that cost twice as much as boilers, even with the subsidy, and don't work very well, and also solar panels, which get bought from the Chinese. I mean, madness.
Julia, this government is completely out of control and beyond belief. I cannot believe the stories that we're hearing this morning. Everything is crisis, crisis. Every damn story. If it's not the Chagos Islands, it's the embassy for the Chinese. This government has got no backbone whatsoever. They're pandering to the people that are much stronger than him. Yeah. He's not going to watch it. Why not? Because he's too scared to face Trump, because I think Trump will put him in his place. The man is spineless, and he's got no right to be in control of governing this country. I really do. We need to get him out, and the party, and the Labour Party totally. It's gone beyond belief.
Yep, couldn't agree with you more. Herbie in Harrow, thank you very much. 10:33 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk to a man who's always speaking sense on every topic, and that is Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spiked Online. He's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:34 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Delighted to welcome Brendan O'Neill to the show, chief political writer at Spiked Online, to talk about, well, there's the general madness in the world. Brendan, I'm not even sure where we start this morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Julia. How are you?
Good, I mean, good, bearing in mind where we are in the world. I mean, we've had a rip-roaring few days, have we not, with news coming out of our ears. Donald Trump is about to arrive in Zurich to appear at Davos. Yeah, that is Air Force One flight delayed. God knows what he's going to say when he speaks at 1:30 today, but we know what he said at that White House press conference last night, telling both Starmer and indeed Macron to straighten out their countries. He said London has a lot of problems, warning us about immigration and our net zero policies. I mean, as we were saying earlier, he's not wrong, is he?
He's not wrong. I'm ever so slightly torn because I look at America and I think you've got a lot of problems too in the United States. You've got some cities that aren't working in the way that they should be working, where there's lots of violence, far higher homicide rates than there are in the UK, and lots of racial division, in fact, as well. That in comparison makes London look like a happy clappy commune. So, there is a double standard there. I think Trump is actually being a bit hypocritical because America has lots of problems. Yeah. But you're right. He's not wrong. There are so many problems in this nation right now. And the most important thing is that we have a government that seems completely uninterested in fixing them, completely out of solutions for them, has no idea how to control the borders or what to do about immigration or how to police cities like London. So he's right to raise it. It will be embarrassing for Keir Starmer, and I'm on the team of embarrassing Keir Starmer right now.
Absolutely. And it's funny because, it feels very different from the days when I would be really outraged. Right? How dare you insult our country or insult our Prime Minister? And the whole country's going, yeah, carry on, Donald Trump, carry on. I mean, this is the thing. We know he's saying something that we know to be true. What do you think is going to come out of this Davos summit? I mean, quite apart from the fact that, we knew that Donald Trump was going to be there. He said in a Zoom address to the Davos summit last year, just a day after his inauguration, that he would be coming this time around. Why on earth, this is the 1 year our Prime Minister, who apparently prefers Davos to Westminster, he said in an interview once, chooses not to go when all the important people are going to be there. Do you think Keir Starmer should get on a sodding plane and be where the power is this week? And what do you think that Donald Trump is going to say that will in any way change or move the situation that we've got over, not just Greenland, but actually the Western NATO alliance, which is absolutely crucial to our safety, our security here in Britain?
Isn't it amazing? For the first time ever, Keir Starmer doesn't want to go to Davos. As you say, he used to love going there and clinking his champagne glasses with all the rich liberals who have the same ideas as him. As you point out, he famously said he prefers Davos to Westminster because who wants to rub shoulders with the elected representatives of us plebs? Really summed him up. But now he's not going when he should go because so much is going to happen there, especially when Trump arrives. We have to be honest about the situation. We are entering a new era of instability because on one side, we've got realpolitik from Donald Trump, who's driven by strategic visions for how he wants the Arctic and Europe to operate, but it's an erratic realpolitik. It's not actually very calmly done, and that is getting people's backs up enormously. I completely disagree with Trump on Greenland. I don't think this sovereign territory is for sale. I think the 57,000 souls who live there should determine the destiny of that piece of land, no one else, including the Danes, by the way. But then on the other side, we've got Europe, the European Union, which is wanging on about how important sovereignty is.
Great word.
This is the same European Union that's currently fining the Hungarian government €1 million a day because it exercised its sovereign right to turn away migrants. This is the same European Union that has meddled in every member state that dared to vote against a certain treaty or to run the economy in a way that the ECB, the European Central Bank, didn't approve of. This is the most meddlesome anti-sovereignty organization on earth. They don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to criticizing Trump.
Couldn't agree with you more on that. I've said that an awful lot to people today, but everyone's talking sense, aren't they? It was interesting watching Ursula von der Leyen, a woman of whom I have very, very little time, bleating on at the podium in Davos yesterday about, time for, an independent Europe. And you always know there is no, Europe should be able to defend itself and should have the wherewithal, both our economies, our energy supply, and our military, that we can defend ourselves and don't have to rely on America. More fool us to have allowed our leaders to get us into that position and relying on the American taxpayer to fund our defence. And that's really the chickens have come home to roost right now with just Greenland and indeed with Ukraine in the last few years. But there's never an opportunity missed by the EU, which is but if we were completely independent, but we were completely strong, and we had an EU army and an EU-run military, and we actually had everything sort of working together as United States of Europe as opposed to United States of America, then everything would be fine. I mean, typical Brussels bureaucrat desperately trying to take away sovereign power and accountability of the people of Europe, and she'd want Britain in as well. But also crucially, just pie in the sky. That's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen. And, there's a twofold problem in Europe. Firstly, they haven't been funding their military defence in the way they should have been. Trump is absolutely right about that. Yep. They became too reliant on, big old America to come in and defend them when the going gets tough. We've seen how that plays out in Ukraine, because if America gets cold feet on helping Ukraine, then things get really bad. So they became too reliant on the US. So there was the funding problem that governments wouldn't fund their own military defense. But also there's the much broader fact that European countries have just ditched military values. We don't educate the young anymore to respect the nations in which they're born. We certainly don't encourage them to do a year's national service. Yeah. Or to demonstrate the values of courage and valor, or to learn how to stand up for themselves, their communities and their countries. Instead, we've encouraged them to feel fragile, to feel, their self-esteem will be shattered if they hear a dangerous idea or an unwoke idea. So it's a twofold problem across modern Europe. They're not funding military defense, and they're not creating the right culture where a people is willing to defend a country, and that's a real problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember you actually talking about this. It was something I experienced when I was in Israel as well. I know you've been to Israel many times, but that feeling of togetherness and that sense of duty to your country, to your community, to your fellow people, and the right, to self-determination, defence. It's everywhere. It's just, you can feel it. It comes out of the pavement. It's everywhere, and that creates such a positive outlet for a country that had been living under absolutely horrific conditions for God knows how many years. That the positivity there, so different from people here in this country, particularly our young, and I really noticed that. Just been some breaking news. Speaking to CNBC in America, in Davos, the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says he will be meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow. No confirmation yet about what they've been talking about, or indeed where it will take place. But there had been all this talk, hadn't there, of like Macron and that message that Donald Trump divulged on his social media that let's have a meeting in Paris. Let's have a G7, and we can on the periphery bring in Ukraine, bring in Russia. But there's an expectation that not just Ukraine be on the to-do list there, but also the Gaza board of peace. What do you make of, again, Americans' constant meetings with Vladimir Putin?
It does worry me, I have to say. I feel so torn on the Ukraine question at the moment, because on the one hand, I want Russia out of Ukraine, and I mean all of Ukraine. I think Ukrainian people have a right to rule their own country. At the same time, this war has got to stop. It's just awful. And of course, it's completely underreported because the media is obsessed with Israel and obsessed with Gaza, and they don't talk about anything else. They've even stopped talking about Ukraine to a large extent. So we're not hearing the full extent of what's still going on in that country. But, with America, I think Trump is genuine when he says he wants to wind wars down. I don't think he's a warmongering president in the way that George W. Bush, bless him, was.
Yeah, I disagree with you on that.
You think he is a warmonger?
I don't think he cares about peace. I don't think Donald Trump cares about anyone but himself. I just really, really don't. And I don't necessarily think that George W. Bush Senior or Junior were warmongers either. I think they did what they had to do.
Well, I think with Trump, I think you're probably right that he's out for number one. But I think in his mind, him being number one and looking out for his own best interests means proving to the world that he is this great peacemaker.
Getting that Nobel Peace Prize.
The Nobel Peace Prize, that element.
Give him the Nobel Peace Prize, for the love of God.
You know, that element of the Greenland thing was so revealing, where he says to the Norwegian Prime Minister, listen, you guys didn't give me the Nobel Peace Prize, so I'm basically says I'm giving up on peace now, so I'm going to go and get Greenland. So you're right, there is a narcissistic drive, but I think one of the benefits of his narcissistic drive is that he does have this instinct to try and calm things down. And one thing I would say in Trump's defense is I don't think the Israeli hostages would be home if it were not for Donald Trump. I don't think any other president
not for a second. There's
made that happen.
So much more I want to talk to you about. I'm just going to squeeze in one more topic because it's a big issue. The revelation yesterday that Chinese mega embassy is going to be going ahead just the other side of the river from where we're sitting in the studio now. And what a surprise today. It's all been confirmed that Keir Starmer will be next week travelling to China. It's clearly, very clearly, a quid pro quo. MI5 and MI6 have warned, well, you know, they can't eliminate the risks of this super embassy. Of course they can't. This is a national humiliation, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. You know, I mean, every nation has to deal with China in some way because it's an economic powerhouse. So we do need a relationship there. But what Starmer has done over this super embassy is bizarre. You know, MI5 has raised concerns about it. Retired city officials have raised concerns. Our allies, including Sweden and New Zealand and Australia, have raised concerns. And Starmer still goes along with it. You know, it really demonstrates that what's missing in politics today is any sense of the national interest. What is in our national interest? And this clearly isn't, but Starmer can't see that.
No, indeed. Well, we'll be talking to Sir Richard Dill, of the former boss of MI6, who's spoken out about this. Often former bosses of these security agencies can speak out much more openly than the current ones. We could talk to him at midday. Brendan, always good to talk to you. I could talk to you about another 20 topics, but time is against us. Brendan O'Neill, chief political writer at Spike Online. Benedict Spence, I mean, it really is fascinating. I mean, how much we are talking about foreign affairs at the moment when there's so much going on at home. And I think a lot of people get very, very frustrated why aren't you talking about more stuff at home? But of course, as you were saying earlier, it does all impact on us because we know that Keir Starmer, he's going to China because he thinks he's going to get a great trade deal and we'll be better off. The great trade deal will be in China's favour. We know that.
Yeah, it will. And this is the reality. When you decide that your domestic policy is going to be all about ramping down what it is that you make, whether it be energy or goods or anything else, then you are going to rely a lot more on the rest of the world. And that is a decision. And it's not been taken by this government or even the Tory government. This has been a long-term process over decades, actually, that we have decided simply we are not going to be a manufacturing nation. We're going to be a services nation,
and then we're going to celebrate that we've got our carbon emissions down. Because we don't need factories anymore.
Exactly.
That's why.
It's
we don't
it's
make
all
anything.
A massive lie and it's a massive con, and this is the end result. The country is weaker and poorer for it.
Yeah, we have a lot of troubles, apparently, according to we need to be straightened out, according to the US President. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this, any of the topics we're talking about. 8344 499 1000. Love to know in particular how happy you are about your taxes being given in subsidies to people to buy heat pumps that don't heat properly and having solar panels made by the Chinese. Properly insane stuff that's going on. Up next, we'll also talk about something incredible. Lots of talk about this. 1.5 million more people who are being allowed under Labour to claim benefits with no condition of seeking work, just written off for the rest of their lives. We'll be paying for them and they'll be making no contribution in. But we're also spending a heck of a lot more on special education needs and disabilities for children, including getting them to and from school. Well, a new report from the Institute of Fiscal Studies says basically this is unsustainable. It is crunch time. We're going to talk to the former Chief Inspector of Ofsted, Baroness Spillman, about that. Up next, this is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:49 is the time. Let's talk about special educational needs and disabled children and the funding that goes to their care. In particular, 2/3 of that funding goes to getting them to and from their schools, whether it's mainstream or specialist education. Well, the Institute for Fiscal Studies has looked at the numbers, which are just going up and up and up. It is coming out of mainstream schools' budgets, and basically has said it's heading for crunch time and it's unsustainable. Well, let's talk about this with Baroness Spielman. She's a Conservative peer, and before she became a peer, Amanda Spielman was a former Chief Inspector of Ofsted. A very good morning to you, Baroness.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. OK, tell us just roughly, like, what is this budget for? How much is it? And how is it worked out?
Well, there's what's called the high needs block, which is a big chunk of money. I think it currently works out about £500 for every household in the country. That is allocated specifically for children with high levels of special educational needs, and that's paying for school places. It's paying for various kinds of support. It's paying for transport, and as you probably know, that's being massively overspent at the moment. And what we've got in special educational needs is a system where all the incentives are to label children as having special needs, to require extra support, to need money, extra money spending on them. Almost nobody in the system is incentivized to say, hold on a moment. First of all, children do vary a lot. A lot of this is within the range of normal variation. Secondly, even for children who do have significant needs, what is it that we're justified in spending extra public money on? And thirdly, how do we keep the overall balance for all the other children in the system?
Because it's coming straight out of mainstream schools. So if your kid hasn't got special education needs, they are missing out on funding for their school, their classroom, their teachers, because that money is going to this minority of kids.
Indeed.
Vastly growing minority, though.
Yeah. And we can't just keep pushing up every budget. And there are parallels with what you were just talking about in the context of welfare, with immigration. If policymaking is totally focused on the needs of one individual, then it's impossible to look at the system level consequences. And of course, at the margin, the incentive is always to be kind. Let's be nice to this person. Let's give them this thing that could change their life. Almost nobody has any incentive to say, actually, overall, this will do more harm than good. So we have to think about it.
There are 29 other children in the class. Well, we know increasingly kids are getting labelled. I think there are actually more problems, but I think a lot of that, frankly, is down to parenting. There's more diagnosis that's going on. That's probably a good thing with kids who are actually getting seen. But, I mean, most people I speak to in the system are of the view that there's massive over-diagnosis, certainly at a minor level. But also we've got this issue where there are parents who are on the much lower incomes who basically know that getting your child statemented, whatever the term is now under SAEND, comes with a whole load of cash. You're entitled to a whole load of extra benefits, not just that extra transport to get them to school and things like that, and extra help for your child. Whereas at the top end, at the middle class end, and I've seen this in my own daughter's school, a private school, highly selective academically, and I mean, I swear, like half the children were given extra time for their exams because apparently they've got some special education need. Absolute bollocks, frankly. I'm going to use that term, bollocks. Have these kids got special education needs? And there's all the, okay, they were in the private system, so they're not in the, but we've got a lot of kids who really do need help. Who really, really need, and they need to be in specialist schools, which cost a lot of money. They've got, one teacher for 4 or 5 children rather than for 30, and that is needed, and we should all be helping those families. But a lot of people, frankly, are taking the mick, aren't they? And particularly on the transport. 2/3 of the budget goes on transport costs, and we know that lots of councils have been doing this where they just do a deal with a cab company, and they're charging, £1,000 a week to take kids to school.
What is happening on transport is astonishing because, of course, the provision of transport for a proportion of children with significant special educational needs do go to a really specialist school, maybe 30, 40 miles from home, and expecting parents to do who've got other children as well, to do that kind of round trip twice a day simply isn't feasible. There are children for whom it is absolutely logical and right that transport is part of the package. But as the definitions have broadened and more children with much more limited problems have come into this bracket, suddenly mainstream schools have got loads of children being taxied to and fro. You go to any sort of mainstream primary or secondary school and you'll see all the taxis turning up at drop-off time and at pick-up time. You try getting a taxi in many provincial towns around about that time and you'll be told they're all busy with the school contracts. You'll have to wait.
Yeah, and they're very, very lucrative. I mean, I think there's definitely some very dodgy dealing going on here. But again, I'm sorry, okay, there's going to be a minibus and it may take quite a long time for your kid to get to and from. But, that's the deal. What is the solution, though? Because we probably don't spend enough on education. We know that the vast amount of spending on education is actually teachers' salaries. We've also got the maintenance of the buildings and the like. But, people say, children are our future. But that is literally the case. Educating our children to the highest standard is actually a very good use of our money.
This is one of the most difficult conversations of all, because if you look at international surveys, England spends a lot on education. We're not a low-funded country. And our school funding is far above the level at which, on the international comparisons, all of the PISAs and the other studies, there is a level above which putting extra money in the system makes no difference. So I think we should be looking at how do we work better at the kinds of level of resource we put in the system at the moment. If the money that's not being spent well was spent better, what could we achieve? So we've got this very big high needs block. As I said, so £500 a household or that sort of level. And there is no equivalent for special educational needs of the kind of job that NICE, the National Institute for Clinical Excellence, does in collecting the evidence on different treatments and evaluating and saying, what can we justify doing out of public money and what things simply don't deliver enough for the cost to justify that spending. And many people hate that and are constantly pushing to change the thresholds. But nevertheless, it's a really important control to stop the cost of healthcare spiralling into the stratosphere. We desperately need something like that for special educational needs. And I recommended that to minister after minister, and I've gone on recommending it these last 2 years. Nothing.
But it's a reality check. There are scarce resources. You don't get everything, and as you say, spending. Some government has been accused of robbing Peter to pay Paul, and actually, this what is amazing is these budgets balloon to balloon to balloon, and no one does anything about it. So they're talking. It's on the front pages, but the reality is everyone's known about it in government.
It's really hard to talk about, and you make yourself the unkind person who
don't you care about disabled children? Yes,
absolutely. And yet it's important to talk about, partly also because some children very clearly have disabilities, problems that will be with them for life, that were there when they're born, they'll be with them for life. But many children have problems that aren't necessarily baked into them, and where if we get things right and give them the right help earlier, as adults, they can be completely normal.
Absolutely. Baroness, no, completely. I couldn't agree with you more. I love that you've always spoken. You've always said the thing that you know needs to be said, rather than what people will think you're a nice person. I think you're a nice person because you genuinely do care about these people. Conservative peer, former Chief Inspector of Ofsted, there, Baroness Spielman. Thank you for that. Benedict Spence. I mean, we know there are so many people who parents who are struggling to get the help that their desperately disabled children do need. And yet money's being thrown at kids. £600 taxi journeys and things like. No, but it's madness.
It is, and it's a form of theft ultimately. And this idea, which is that you can't possibly take it away from people because people will suffer. You're taking that money away that should be there, ring fence for people with very serious conditions, and those people do exist, and there are rather more of them than we would like there to be. There was a reason that these systems were brought in for those people. But the second that actually you then get an attitude, which seems to be pervasive in our public sector, which is you must believe everybody with every sob story they say and don't read too much into it, and then COVID happens and then You can just do it over the phone.
But also, like,
It's ridiculous.
you know, again, every head teacher I've spoken to has said, like, the idea that, you know, like 30% of the kids or wherever it is, you know, have got some special educational need, have got ADHD, autism, rubbish. Most of them, what they need is no fizzy drinks, proper bedtime, healthy meals, healthy menu, no playing on your gadgets until 2 in the morning. I mean, I again, and that means if we didn't focus energy and money on those kids, we would focus it on the children who do desperately need our help. It's genuinely immoral to do what we're doing right now, and it's immoral even for the children who are completely fine and who are also missing out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and many other stories that we're talking about, whether it's what Donald Trump has said about we need to straight out the UK, Chinese mega embassy, you name it. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. We're fast approaching 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. Lots more to talk about. If you've missed anything in the first hour, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and hit subscribe. Never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump, who is due to arrive anytime soon in Zurich to attend the Davos summit, the one that Keir Starmer's not bothering to go to, the only time everyone else is going to be there. He said in a White House press briefing yesterday that Keir Starmer needs to straighten out Britain and that London has lots of problems. I mean, he's not wrong, is he? Well, how do you feel about the US president, who's facing quite a lot of problems in his country, basically giving his tuppence worth on our nation? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, going to talk more in detail about Labour having handed benefits out to 1.5 million, count them, 1.5 million more British people with, crucially, not here's some benefits while you look for work, but no requirement for them to look for work at all. Absolutely extraordinary. And guess who's paying for it? You and me. Plus a victory for common sense, yet another one, after talking to those fabulous Darlington nurses who won their victory last week. They just later that afternoon, actually on Monday, went to speak to and stand by and support a nurse who was called a pedo trans patient Mr. because he is a man. She was allowed to, how generously, keep her job after he launched a tirade of racial abuse against her. It's just quite the most extraordinary story, and I'm so pleased Jennifer Mellé has won her case as well. We'll be talking about that and plenty more besides. Joining me for all the chat for the next couple of hours, Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Good morning once again to you.
Hello, how are they?
Hello. How are things? I mean,
have they got better in the last hour?
Have they got looking around? Not
no,
so
I'm still
good.
Here.
Yeah, he is still here.
Sorry about that.
Still here. I mean, it is absolutely mind-blowing. We've got the issue, we've still got Ukraine, we've still got what's going on in Iran. No one seems to be helping those protesters. We have got basically possibly NATO crumbling before our eyes with the US threatening Greenland. We've got this Gaza Board of Peace, which, let's put Putin and Blair on it. That'll make things better there. All that stuff happening overseas. But we've got big problems at home, of course. We've got, as we're talking about, the welfare bill spiralling. We've still got massive uncontrolled illegal immigration. No one plans to do anything about the levels of net migration legally that we've had in terms of those people who are still here. We've got an NHS in absolute chaos and crisis. People even elderly people, even in the 80s, being put on trolleys in corridors for two days at a time. Even we've got our government kowtowing to the Chinese, giving them an embassy in return for, please let me come on a visit and let us have a new embassy in Beijing and stop turning the water off in our embassy in Beijing. I kid you not. Giving away the Chagos Islands to the Chinese-controlled Mauritians and then paying for the privilege. I mean, we've got net zero. I mean, literally, I could do the whole 2 hours on this. We've got Ed Miliband, the net zero insanity secretary, saying, let's spend 15 billion quid subsidising people to get solar panels made in China, by the way, using coal-fired energy, coal-produced energy, and then heat pumps, which even when they're subsidised to the tune of £7,000 by you and me, the taxpayer, under this plan, are still going to cost twice as much. And a small matter, don't actually heat your home. I mean, and yeah, we've got local elections being called off because, of course, Nigel Farage, according to Lisa Nanny, would be the fascist, but not the Labour government calling off elections for almost 4 million people because basically they're going to lose them. I don't think things are going very well, Benedict.
I mean, the coffee machine in this place still works, so, thank God for small miracles.
I'd like to point out that it's got 5 different buttons for different types of coffee, and they are all identical when they actually come out.
It produces
just throwing
coffee.
that out
It
there.
Produces something that is almost entirely, but not quite, unlike coffee. It's great. I'm very happy about that.
That's your cheery. That's your cheery.
Hey, last year everybody was accusing me of being downbeat. I'm trying to look for the positives here. Okay, yes, lots of things aren't particularly great. Which would you like to start with? The Chinese embassy? Iran? Would you like to start with Donald Trump menacing the entire continent of Europe?
You're
or
the
Putin
audience.
Doing it?
You decide. Where should we start? 344 499 1000. Look, I mean, the question we're asking our audience today is that Donald Trump has told Keir Starmer to straighten out Britain. Says London has a lot of problems. I'm asking everyone's reaction to that. I'm going to play the clip and then I'll read you the numbers. If you haven't heard this, because I don't know how many people could sit through at 6 o'clock in the evening, 2 hours of a Donald Trump White House press briefing. But asked about his relationship with Keir Starmer, after criticising Keir Starmer yesterday, and also his relationship with Emmanuel Macron as well. This is what Donald Trump had to say.
They get a little bit rough when they're, when I'm not around, but when I'm around, they treat me very nicely. And, I like both of them. They're both liberal. They've got to straighten out their countries. You can't, London is having a lot of problems, and if you look at Paris, got a lot of problems. They have 2 problems, immigration and energy. They got to stop with the windmills, and they got to go back like UK has an unbelievable asset called the North Sea. Norway uses it, makes a fortune. They have a better section of it, and they don't do it.
I mean, the only thing that's not correct about that, Benedict, is that we've only got 2 problems, the immigration and the windmills. I want to know your reaction to this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Lots of you already doing that. And calls are charged at a national rate, of course. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. What did you make of all that?
I mean, it's the first thing, of course, is we have to say, as much as, yes, there are many problems with London as a city, then every single city in the United States has huge problems. I mean, New York's just elected an actual communist, not like a sadiq Khan communist, but an actual communist.
New York is in a terrible state.
Yeah, it's in a disastrous situation, and everybody knows what's going on with places like Minnesota and the
whole of California.
Yeah, the fact that they're having to send in agents to sort of round people up to deport them because they're there that long, and that local authorities are saying, please come and stay because we hate Donald Trump and all of that nonsense. But when it comes to the overarching issues, let's be very clear here. The United Kingdom should be one of the wealthiest nations on earth when it comes to energy production. We are not. The United States, meanwhile, is going gangbusters. It's now, I think, the pound for pound, the world's largest fossil fuel producer. That kind of gives you...
Certainly the major exporter.
Yeah, and that gives you an idea of the different directions that we're going in. Our neighbours, places like Norway, which, of course, Donald Trump name-checked, is making a lot of money from that energy that we could be doing, even though if we decided...
We buy Norway's energy.
But do you know who else's energy? Do you know who else's energy we also buy? There's another country that's quite close to us that, however many years ago, decided it was going to double down on a form of clean fuel, the different sort, nuclear power.
France.
That's France. France is doing fantastically well. One of these two options we could have gone for. We could have gone for both. We could have had a mix of the two. We decided not to go through either. So we decided to have the windmills and the solar panels in one of the worst places on earth to have solar panels. And
loads of sun out there today. Loads of sun outside that grey window.
Lo and behold, our energy prices are through the roof. And then
I think you'll find that Ed Miliband says that's because we are the victim of international gas markets.
He's a half.
It's absolute nonsense.
Explain to me then, if we made our own gas and it would still be as expensive as everyone else's because we're subject to the international market, why is France's and Denmark's and Norway's and all of those countries, why is theirs lower?
Oh, stop with your facts and your logic, Benedict. You know he doesn't listen to that. He's a net zero fantasist.
Two numbers next to each other, our number and the other country's number. If he was right, they'd both be the same, but they're not. And it's strange. It happens for every single country, Ed. Why is that? Honestly, Rishi Sunak was right about needing more maths education in this country because the Energy Secretary doesn't have a clue how to count.
He genuinely scares me. We were talking on it. I did actually watch some of his interviews in various different media this morning. I like to, as I scout around in the morning, to see what everyone else is talking about. And I do find he does talk a lot more sense when he's just got the sound off. But you can see how messianic he is. And he, like Keir Starmer, really shares that whole, how dare you question me? How dare you? And I'm telling you right now, hand over fist, I know probably 100 times more than him about energy policy in this country, and I know nothing about energy policy in this country.
All he knows about is an ideology, and he is one of the few people still chained to that ideology who will not relent.
Still Keir Starmer's fault. He's the Prime Minister. It's up to him.
Of course he is, and you should get rid of him. But the problem is, of course, Keir Starmer is a weak Prime Minister. He can't afford to continue to upset everybody in his party, because every time he does that, it gets slightly closer to the edge. We all know that he's done, but he doesn't want it to be done yet.
Do you think anyone's told him? I think he reads the front pages and knows that it's all over.
Do you know what happened to the Portuguese fascist dictator Salazar when he had a stroke in his 70s, and they all thought he was going to die, and so they appointed a new government, and then he actually didn't die. He came out of his coma and he could sort of function but not quite, and everybody was so scared of him that they couldn't dare to tell him that he
wasn't leader anymore.
So they actually created a fake cabinet for him, and they used to give him papers and stuff to sign. Only half of his body worked, and he wasn't entirely all there, but for a good 2.5 years
we've had worse prime ministers.
He believed he was still the leader of Portugal. That's genuinely
guys, this is what we should do.
He's not had a stroke yet, he's just dull.
This is what we should do. Let's just tell Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband, no, you're in charge. We'll let you go and do TV interviews. They'll think it's going live, but it'll be in a side studio.
Yeah.
They'll be absolutely. We'll let you go in Parliament, and we'll all play along, and we'll just put someone competent in charge. I'm sorry, guys.
It'd be really funny.
I think this may be the solution to all our problems.
Absolutely, we should. That's what. Honestly,
let's start a petition.
Absolutely. Why not do that? Whilst we're sort of refurbishing Parliament, we'll build a new Parliament next to the old one, and we can put him there, and he'd just dodder around.
I mean, to be fair, we've had fake government for years. We were in the EU because we had a puppet Parliament for years as is. Do you like to see what I did there?
Yeah.
Keir Starmer being told to fix his country. I mean, I don't think he's going to be listening to Donald Trump. He's not even going to be in Davos. Should he be going to Davos, given that we knew a year ago that Donald Trump, having been inaugurated, he said in a Zoom address, which I mean, the usual ramblings to Davos last year, that he said he would be there in person. When the most powerful man in the world is going to be in Davos, when a load of other senior world leaders, the Macrons, the Carneys and all of that, by the way, a lot of them, Starmer's big liberal mates. Why of all these times is our Prime Minister not there when he goes and when just Belgium and Mozambique go? I know he gets a lot of beef for you're always out of the country, and he did that interview famously. And I've never seen him look happier or keener about anything. I've said Lady Vic, she would absolutely love it if he ever spoke with such enthusiasm about her. Where do you prefer to be, Davos or Westminster? He went, oh, Davos. And he looked at the interviewer as if they were insane to even ask the question. And he wasn't talking about loving a nice skiing trip,
Yes, no, of course.
He, like you say, he likes being around those people, not us bigoted, hoi polloi, ignorant British voters, Brexiteers, God forbid. But this is the one time he should be there.
He should. And, I know people like to sort of scoff at Davos and the World Economic Forum, and, there's lots of conspiracies about it, but actually it is a point at which lots of people do go and meet, and you're not having to go through the weird rigmarole of the UN giving the speeches that nobody listens to or any of that sort of thing. There is a lot of stuff that does actually get done.
Have you ever been?
To Davos, not to the actual conference. I might have been to Davos for other reasons. Davos is great, by the way, but not for that reason.
Could any of us afford Davos?
I was only there for a day.
Yeah, so no. The answer was no.
Looking around going, this is jolly nice, isn't it? I see why they all come here. It is an important forum, ultimately, and that's because important people do go there. Whether or not we like that that's how business is done, that is how business is done. And so actually, yes, I am sort of sat here going, why of all years, to all the fora that you could go to, are you not going?
He's not there because he's been told off for being abroad all the time, which he constantly is anyway. There was that talk of Macron wanting this G7 hastily convened summit on Thursday. It doesn't look like that's happening. But Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, has said he's going to be meeting Putin. We don't know where tomorrow. We don't know what Donald Trump is going to say in Davos today, but I think a little bit more of the same. When he was asked about, where he was on Greenland, he said, he was asked how far he would go to take it from Denmark. He said yesterday, you'll find out.
Yeah.
Do you think we will find out?
I don't think we'll necessarily find out today. I think you can never predict exactly what Donald Trump is going to say. You can never predict which direction he's going to walk in. At some point, I suspect he's actually going to row back on all of this once he's given a preferential access deal to Greenland, or some sort of arrangement, a bit like with the British having to sort of lease Hong Kong and then give it back at some point. There will be some sort of agreement where the US has effective control, which, to be honest, it already does have a lot of control.
This is the thing.
It just wants more. He wants that for his legacy.
Is there an element where, with all of this, Donald Trump has done us all a bit of a favour in Europe, which is, I say, I don't mean EU, but in Europe as a continent, a bit of a wake-up call, because they didn't listen in 2018 when he, in his first term, said, and I remember sitting there on the hand, even going, we don't spend enough, and we can't defend ourselves, and we're not, and he shouldn't have to commit to NATO if countries were not committed to their basic minimum requirement of spending 2% of their GDP. Even we weren't doing that in real terms on defence. They all laughed at him. I remember saying at the time, but he's right. Thank God. I was not a fan of Donald Trump at the time, but he was right. And when he says things like right, we should absolutely accept it. When he says, basically Americans have been funding defence, and frankly, it's not our problem anymore. We're interested in the Americas. Our sphere of influence is, the Atlantic, the Pacific. We don't need you. We're not bothered anymore. Now, I think that's actually long-term wrong, because I think actually Europe and America acting together are much stronger. Yeah. They are greater as one. But he's quite right that we can't defend our own continent, Ukraine, can't defend Greenland, part of Denmark, therefore part of NATO. We can't do it, and we did need that wake-up call. Do you think there's any possibility that our leaders will actually wake up? I mean, the Poles, they've woken up. They're well on it. The Germans have woken up. They've barely had any defence. I mean, they said, for goodness sake, when Ursula von der Leyen was defence minister of the German government, they once sent German troops out on exercises. They had so few guns, they had to use broomsticks. As their guns. I kid you not. A major economic powerhouse nation, a G7 nation, and they didn't have enough guns for military exercises.
I mean, so I heard somebody the other day refer to Europe as the Soviet Union but with inherited wealth, and that therefore it's able to keep the fantasy going a little bit longer, and it's not aware yet that things have broken down to a really catastrophic point.
We still think that we're president.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing. At some point, because of the sort of the national differences, as you sort of allude to there with countries like Poland, those are beginning to pull apart. Hungary is another good example, although it's not really wealthy or powerful enough to actually effect any change, just talks about it. But that is the direction, which is that now Europe is starting to go in different directions because it realises the thing itself, the edifice, isn't working. Not everybody will pull in the same direction, and so you need to look to your own interests. But it's ironic that at this exact moment is when Europe, funnily enough, needs to A, pull together, and B, have some sort of concerted effort to defend itself and look into its own interests. This is the irony of the European project. It talks about itself as some sort of superpower, but it has no intention of being that superpower.
And that's related to the net zero issue, it's that defence, and it's also, and again, something, you know, Brendan and Neil touched on earlier about, you know, our sense of self, our, you know, the self-flagellation and the you know, telling all of our children, oh, you've all got some sort of disability or anxiety, and you know, you don't have to go to work, and just this whole sort of just defeatist giving up attitude, which is very different from the Americans.
Again, though, having had Brexit and had the opportunity for Brexit dividends, one of which is, you know, autonomy when it comes to things like defence, we have not really acted, you know, energy being another one. We have the opportunity, funnily enough, to help drag Europe in the right direction by being outside of its rules and therefore being able to showing other countries what could be possible.
I think we were massively impacted by you know, COVID and then the Ukraine war.
Sure.
I think that just took everything off track.
That's true. But right now, we can still go, OK, that's rubbish, but we can draw a line under that.
Not under Starmer, we can't. He's tying us.
Ideologically, our politicians are not at that point yet. The voters are far ahead of them in a different direction. It's one of the funny things about, you know, people talking about, you know, what reform are going to bring. Reform are behind a lot of the voters on a lot of things, and actually they're very cautious. And you hear this about Farage saying, oh, carefully now, you're not going to like what's going to come after me if I don't get my way.
Like mass deportations.
Yeah, because actually the public is shifting in a certain direction faster than the politicians are, certainly faster than the Westminster.
Well, they live in the real world.
They will get there at some point. The question is, how much do they want to drag their heels into this? Britain, as an independent nation outside of that, has the power to move faster than much of Europe, but it has to actively choose to do that. It's not just going to happen by itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the Chinese super embassy just across the river. In fact, apparently Donald Trump has been, you know, he's been critical of the Chagos Islands. I imagine they'd be fairly critical of the Chinese super embassy as well. MI5, MI6, when we talk to Richard Dearlove, former MI6 boss, at midday, and he's certainly, a bit later than that, he certainly thinks there are massive security risks here. But don't worry, Keir Starmer's got his trip to China next week. We knew perfectly well this was a quid pro quo. If we didn't approve the Chinese super embassy, absolutely he wouldn't get that trip to China. He thinks he's going to do some amazing trade deal. He ain't going to do an amazing trade deal. If he does, it's going to be amazing for China, but not for us. All it's going to involve is them selling us more cheap stuff made using coal and often slave labour, and we're going to go, oh, and thank you very much.
Well, given that they're building this super embassy just across the river, I would like to place on record my staunch support for everything that Beijing has done for us. I think it's a wonderful trade partner. I think that the one China policy is the right one. Taiwan should not have its own independence. And okay, are they still there?
They're still listening.
This is London, so it's not going to get built on time. So I think we've still got a couple of years. Yeah, this is, of course, one of the funny
there's going to be legal challenges, and their hope is, of course, that we can get another government in by the time those legal challenges still going, and just go not happening.
This is one of the very funny things, which is that actually the Chinese have been complaining just the length of time that this takes, and then they're looking at the planning processes.
They'd have built 5 airports by now.
Yeah, it would have been built yesterday. It would have been done in 48 hours. They'd have done it very quickly, again, with slave labour and dodgy
But the
resources.
one of the things I find extraordinary is that we say we want to build a new embassy. We could promise our embassy in Beijing, apparently. Oh, diddums to the poor Foreign Office staff. And as in a quid, tit for tat, the Chinese have cut off the water to the embassy. I mean, I'm sorry, at that point you withdraw all your diplomats.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you just don't part. We're just embarrassing.
But this is the nonsense.
Britain, I know, wouldn't part with that.
Yeah, this is the nonsense about, following the rules-based international order, which has never been a thing. Most countries do, in fact, behave this way. They act like bullies because they're run by bullies, and that's how the world is always run. It's only us, muggins here, our civil servants that sit here and go, oh, well, we must literally kowtow to the Chinese, or we won't get what we want, which is running water. What a load of nonsense.
I know, absolutely. Let's just talk finally before we go to a break about Reform UK getting a go-ahead for a legal challenge against Labour's plan to cancel local elections in May. But up to 4 million people are going to miss out because there's been reorganisation of district and county councils. Apparently, among the many things that prove the incompetence of our bureaucrats, not just in Whitehall but across the country, is apparently they can't organise an election. I mean, seriously, it's sending out ballot papers and having some people in pubs and local offices for people to come and vote. It's not. I think I'm pretty sure I could organise it for you guys. And they're basically saying, you know, we can't go ahead with these elections. People are going to miss out for some 2 years. Sorry, trying not to sneeze while I'm joking. Apologies. But even the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has said that. Apologies.
You're just allergic to the inadequacy of our local authorities.
I'm allergic to attacks on democracy. That's not I mean, it's an absolute outrage. If Sir Lindsay Hoyle, you know, he's saying these elections should go ahead. Yeah. But they've got a court hearing next month. I think it should be, you know, next week, personally.
These things should go ahead. Of course they should. That's what our system is ostensibly founded on. But let's be clear here. If these are people who can't fill in potholes, why should we be surprised that they don't want to actually deal with the mobilisation of millions of people across the country to vote and then count the votes?
I tell you what, we should just tell them, if every single local election you organise, you get to have another rainbow-painted zebra crossing. Oh, they'd absolutely... You could wear another pride flag. They'd organise it
Lanyards for everyone.
Lanyards for everyone, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. 0344 499 1000. Lots of calls coming in on all the different topics we're talking about. We are going to be talking to the wonderful Baroness Kate Hoey. Oh, has she defected to Reform yet? She seems to be the name on everyone's lips about another defection from a Labour figure this time. And we're going to be talking about the latest trans madness, but little moments of sanity with a nurse allowed to keep her job, even though she referred to a, well, violent, aggressive, trans-identified paedophile prisoner as, how dare she, Mister. First up there, it's time to find out how you could be in with a chance of winning a trip of a lifetime to San Francisco. Talk is giving away flights, a 3-night stay and a 4-star intercontinental stay at £2,500 spending money, plus tickets to the Super Bowl to top it all off. Listen to how you can find out.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 83338. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 22nd January 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at TalkSport.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now.
He was rather more coherent than me because he wasn't trying not to sneeze the whole way through. Anyway, that's how you can enter. You don't want to miss out on that trip of a lifetime. Very good luck. We'll take a quick break. Your call's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:27 is the time. You know, at some point in this hour or the next hour, we've got to be talking about the battles between Elon Musk and the RyanAir boss, Michael O'Leary, who's kind of been hitting back at Elon Musk. He basically said he wanted to buy the airline and he wanted to take Michael O'Leary off the airline and put someone called Ryan in as the boss of RyanAir, mainly because RyanAir decided not to use Starlink on their planes. I mean, you've got to love these. I mean, these spats between these men. I mean, I'm sorry, but it just tickles me. It just tickles me. We'll talk about that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say. I don't know why that's cheered me up so much because all the other stories are so miserable. Let's go to Rajit, who's in Harrow, to have his say. Rajit, what do you want to say, my love?
Yes, good morning, Julia.
Morning.
I've had a strong feeling since Labour got elected, since October 2024. I've had a feeling that this government will be really bad, and I think that...
Wait a minute, it took you till October to realise they would be really bad? They were bad in July.
The minute that they surrendered the Chagos Islands in October, the announcement was made in October 2024. I have thought about this government, well, actually I can't remember, but it's in October after they were elected. Yeah. I think that this government is... Starmer is more of an enemy for this country than Putin. And I think that the biggest problem that we're having in Britain is that nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. I mean, giving away things to China, and the Chagos thing is intimately bound with this. It's intimately bound. It cannot be. It's kind of human rights lawyer thing. Yeah. And it's an incredibly intractable kind of problem that we don't seem to be able to deal with. I mean, with all the Houses of Lords, and it's taken Donald Trump yesterday to say something which has changed the perspective. But even then, there's hanging on like dear life to being treacherous to this country. Yep. And why can't there be any kind of insurrection or anything like that happening? And
we don't do insurrections in this country. It's one of the reasons why it's a nice place to live. But I mean, I was saying on the show yesterday, I said that Keir Starmer, you know, with Chagos, with the Chinese super embassy, all of this, that he's a clear and present danger to our country.
He is. And I'm really glad that you're doing something about it, and anybody else.
Well, we're talking about it.
Write your MP. We have to have a rebellion about this, about all of these votes for the Chagos and the Chinese embassy.
Yeah, well, I think our best chance of things is obviously President Trump waking up to certainly to the Chagos Islands sell-off. Giveaway, sorry, and basically saying it's just down to stupidity, which is absolutely right. A US veto would be very helpful at this time, I have to say. Rajit, great call, very impassioned. Laura Jane is in Hampshire. Laura Jane, you want to talk about the provision for special education needs pupils and the huge spending on SEND.
Yes, I listened to your conversation with Banish Spielman, and I'm very much in agreement. I left the teaching profession earlier than normal because ages ago. I'm 60, but the bureaucracy was creeping in, and I couldn't teach anymore. It was just a nightmare. But my point is that to cut money, to cut funds, what they did was they put teaching assistants into the classrooms. I'm talking about primary schools here, and who did not have the specialist teaching skills that I spent quite some time training to do. And so the children weren't getting the right sort of help. So at the end of the day, when they got to secondary school, there were even more problems. And we're talking about a low level, you know, like sort of dyslexia and things like that. And I'm not talking about private schools. And I think that the problem is that we're not, as Spielman said, we're not spending the money correctly. Yeah. We'd be better off having somebody like me with my training in a primary school who takes the child out, gives them the right help, and 45 minutes later they go back into the classroom. Yep. It's money better spent. But, of course, the money is not being spent correctly, and the state schools are in a mess now. I mean, I look at them as an ex-teacher and head of the special needs department, and it's just a nightmare. I really, really am glad I left the teaching profession. Because
I've had a lot of people say that, and that's the interesting thing. And I know the Campaign for Real Education always point this out, that, you know, all the other countries of the world that have really high standards, their kids doing really well, they're getting the education, getting the real grades, you know, because they know their stuff. They don't have teaching assistants. They have highly qualified, well-paid teachers. Well, we could pay teachers a lot more if they were better qualified, you know, and if we weren't paying for really low qualified, low skills teaching assistants in the classroom. And again, expectations of discipline. That's one of the things. The expectation that you sit down and you're told something and you learn from the person in front of you as an adult who knows more than you. The schools that are doing well, that's how they're doing it. You look at the Catherine Burble Singh, her school, the Michaela school. That's what they do. It's old. People say it's old-fashioned teaching, but it works.
Yes, but you see, the problem is if you have a child who has special educational needs, low level, especially the boys, if they get frustrated, they behave badly, and then it affects the rest in the class.
Yeah,
and if you've got
exactly.
30 in a class and you don't have, as the main teacher, you don't have the expertise, that child needs to get his frustration out by being taught properly.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We need you back in the classroom, Laura Jane in Hampshire. Thank you very much indeed. Just some breaking news for you. Well, there's two things here. Mark Rutte, the NATO General Secretary, he has said that they are working on a Greenland plan behind the scenes, he has said. But also the US has signalled that trade talks with Britain. It's weird because you remember we had that amazing trade deal, which never actually come into fruition. But the US signalled that trade talks with Britain are on hold, accusing Keir Starmer of letting us down over the Chagos Islands. The Treasury Secretary in the US, Scott Bessent, has said no more trade talks were scheduled between the two countries. Relations have hit a new low in the wake of the new tariff war. But he said that glitches in the trade deal between the US and UK were part of the problem, and criticised the decision to hand the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius. So, yet again, the government makes decisions that harm us, harm our economy, harm our security, and are damaging trade as well. Not a surprise. 11:34 is the time. We'll take a quick break. We'll get the reaction of Baroness Kate Hoey to that and all the other stories coming up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Delighted to welcome to the show now Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer and former Labour MP. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
I don't know where to start, Kate. There's so much to talk about. Just let's come up with just that breaking news we had a few moments ago from the US Treasury Secretary that basically is signalling that trade talks between Britain and the US. Don't know why there's still trade talks. We suppose, didn't Keir Starmer say, we've got this amazing trade deal with the US? Yet it's never actually been finalised. But he says they're on hold, accusing Keir Starmer of letting the US down over the Chagos Islands. What do you make of that?
Well, I have to say, sad as I might be about trade deals, but I think there was lots of problems there anyway. I'm absolutely delighted that finally Trump has actually got Chagos on his desk, has read it, has probably listened to some people who he hadn't been listening to before, who hadn't even told him, and have come out with this very now pretty clear that he is vetoing, he is saying he is not supporting in any way the Chagos deal. And Starmer is going to have to listen to that. Otherwise, we are really into a situation where, Trump, when he gets his into something like that, he's not going to give in. He's not going to change his mind on this, I don't think, having had so long to actually come up with.
The thing is, you may not have a choice because the US veto. Part of the thing is, they're going to be happy with this military base being leased again. We know what, if it's a 100-year lease, we know what happened to Hong Kong when we just leased Hong Kong for those extra 100 years, and what's happened to Hong Kong now.
Yeah, well, I think, he obviously hadn't been briefed on it. I mean, over the last couple of months, I have to say, there's been a lot of people, including myself and others particularly, who've been involved with absolutely trying to get into the background in the Trump administration to make sure they really understood this. And there's been a lot of good work done on that. And I think that has happened. Plus, of course, the Greenland issue does mean that he's kind of seeing this as obviously a way of getting at us too. But, you know, the whole thing was just so stupid. And at least he actually thought we were getting paid for it. So I expect when he discovered, probably on the plane as he came over, after people had told him, no, actually, they're not getting money. They're paying to give it away to Mauritius. It's just, it is something you couldn't make up.
It's absolutely terrifying, is what it is. It's absolutely terrifying. And we've got the Chinese embassy. We know that paydays come for that as well, because an announcement was made that Chinese embassy is going to go ahead, the mega embassy, about all the security concerns. But what a surprise! Within 24 hours, we learned that Keir Starmer's trip to China is on. Clearly, very clear quid pro quo. And obviously, Keir Starmer thinks he's going to get some amazing trade deal out of that. He's not.
Well, China will only do what suits China. And, you know, they've played him along very well. They've played the whole issue very well. They seem to have managed to get support from people who you would have thought had more sense. I mean, I was shocked to discuss with somebody yesterday who'd have been a former very senior Labour person who, in that whole area of defence, who was just saying, oh, well, you know, it's bringing all 7 sites of the Chinese that the Chinese have got at the moment into one, so that will make it easier to, you know, monitor. It's just such nonsense. And I said, well, why on earth why do they need 7 sites?
Yes.
Why are we...
Good question.
So, and of course, all he could say was, well, China's a big country and it's very important that we have trade deals with them. And I thought, oh, my goodness, you know, you just think, what on earth is going on?
Our elites really, really haven't got a clue. And again, it's amazing how often they've been telling us they're acting in our best interest, but they clearly aren't. When we know the security services are terrified of what's going on as well. What do you make of Donald Trump's criticism? We've already played the audio and the video in this house. I won't bore people with it again. But Donald Trump was asked yesterday about his relationship with Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, and he said they get a little bit rough when they're, you know, when I'm not around. He says, but when I'm around, they treat me very nicely. He says they're both liberal. He considers that an insult. And he says they've got to straighten out their countries. And he says London is having a lot of problems. He says Paris is having a lot of problems. I mean, he's not wrong, though, is he?
No, the only thing he didn't say, which probably we would have liked him to say, when he said about Macron not having long in office, he didn't say that about Starmer, because of course we don't have a general election for a few years. But it is you know, it is an amazing situation. Of course, Trump is outspoken and he says what he thinks immediately, and he doesn't. I mean, it's quite nice actually to have a leader sometimes, even if you don't agree with him, who actually comes out with what he's thinking rather than
I remember you and I were on the same side of the debate in the Brexit debate, and President Obama stood there next to a beaming David Cameron, saying we would be at the back of the queue for a trade deal with the US if we left the EU. And I think everyone, you could see the Remain campaigners thinking, oh, well, we're going to go up in the polls. I think Brexit went up in the polls by 3 or 4 percentage points the next day, because people were saying, outraged. How dare a foreign leader interfere with our decision about whether or not we wanted our own national sovereignty or not? I think a lot of people will just say, who the hell do you think you are, Donald Trump, giving your opinion on our country and our capital city?
Well, those very same people who'd said that about how wonderful it was that we were going to be in the back of the queue if we left the EU are exactly the people now who are really having a go at Trump. You know, if we have a special relationship, supposedly, then clearly, you know, those who we're in a special relationship with should be able to say things quite openly and honestly. But I think, I mean, we have to blame the people behind the scenes in Downing Street. And, you know, in terms of Chagos, I understand that Jonathan Powell was over in America just after the election and spent something like 3 weeks really having a go at the background, the black administration to get that across the line. And it's all about lawyers and money. It's not, it's not, you know, if it was really about the security, then I think people might start to actually talk about it. And I watched the House of Commons debate last night from the gallery, which is very interesting, along with, you know, a whole dozens of Chagosians who just sat there so silent, so disciplined, couple of little children, really well behaved. And it was just really sad because they've been treated so badly in the past by our country, and now Starmer is repeating it, and all those Labour MPs who didn't even come in and listen and then came rushing in to vote, with only 2 of them voting against.
But also, they really care about individual, people's rights and the right of self-determination. That's all, you know. So that all matters, doesn't it, when it comes to Greenland, but not Chagos. Look, I'm sorry, I'm of the view that our national security matters more than that. I'm sorry, I really do. But also, past wrongs and the like. But it is just the hypocrisy. It just blows my mind. Let me also talk to you about the hypocrisy of it. I mean, you're an ex-Labour MP of a Labour Party that doesn't think it represents Labour anymore, the actual workers. The number of people who are claiming Britain's main benefit without having to work has risen by 1.5 million since Labour came to power. We've got, the inflation figures that aren't looking so good. We've got latest unemployment figures, the number of jobs available. I mean, things are not going entirely in the right direction, are they not? But the figures now show there are almost 4.2 million people on universal credit. But the crucial thing about this is these are the people with no work requirement because of a surge of largely mental rather than physical health claims. We suddenly have an extra 1.5 million people in the last 18 months who apparently just are so crippled by anxiety, ADHD, depression, whatever it is, they are unable not just to work now, but to look for work at any point in the future. We've written those people off. And we're going to be paying for them, and they're not going to contribute a single penny themselves. This is a disaster.
Well, the people who are working so hard, getting up early in the morning, going off to jobs, that many of us wouldn't want to do, they are seeing their taxes now going to so many people who have got a supposed problem. Now, there's no doubt about it. There are people with really serious mental health issues, and of course, they couldn't work it and might not even be safe for them to work or safe for the people who are working around it. But an awful lot of this now is this kind of new sort of ideology about stress and people being affected by being upset by something, being, disturbed, being, someone says something to them and they have to go off and take 24 hours off to get over what, and we're bringing up a lot of young people now who are going to be, being taught almost from in school to, to be afraid of things, not to, we want to stop them doing things.
Well, a lot of parents are doing that to their kids, though. Or if my kid, honestly, the polling now, the stats and kids going to school, the parents, you say, my kid didn't feel like school or just felt a bit anxious, so I let them stay home from school. Literally the worst thing you can do.
Absolutely. I mean, children need the discipline of knowing that sometimes you have to do things when you don't actually feel like it. You don't feel like getting up, but you have to, and you have to go to school. And so, I mean, I'm afraid a lot of this is down to parents, but then that's the new generation who are going to be similar, if not worse, than the current generation of how they're treating it.
It's a massive worry, it really is. Let's talk about, just finally, about Reform getting to challenge the Labour government over the cancellation of elections for some almost 4 million people across the country. Mostly it's Labour councils who've taken up. Basically, the government said, it's your choice. If you don't think you can organise those elections, what with all this reorganisation of district councils, county councils and the like, then you can choose not to hold those elections. The vast majority of those are Labour councils. Some haven't committed either way yet, but are likely to go ahead. One Lib Dem, a Tory council, I think, as well. But basically it's councillors who are going, I don't think we're going to keep our seats, so I think we won't have the election, we'll delay it by a year. Some are seeing elections being delayed by 2 or 3 years in their area. Reform have won this right to challenge it. Interestingly, Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, formerly a Labour MP before he sat as an independent Speaker, he thinks this is wrong as well. This is an incredible attack on democracy, isn't it?
Well, I think, particularly if you've already had your elections postponed and then now you're told that you're not going to get another one, that really is a form of kind of despotism, keeping people in power.
Some for 7 years. Some councils are going to be in power 7 years.
It's been a very convenient excuse for them, the fact that they're doing all this changing, which most people probably think is a lot of waste of money anyway. I mean, it's going to be creating another huge bureaucracy in some areas and more mayors and all of that. So I just think it is shocking. And I mean, I doubt if there'll be much chance of the legal action working, but I think it's important that some political party stands up to this and speaks out.
Well, except they're being postponed under a law, you know, for in extreme circumstances in the time of war. It was used in the pandemic. Again, I don't even accept it was necessary during the pandemic to postpone elections. But this, you know, this is not an extreme situation. And this, on the same basis, they could argue, they could try and reorganise some government departments and cancel the general election. This sets a terrible precedent.
Yeah, it does, and it will. But I think what it does show is Labour is very, very much running scared, and you can see that in the way that some of the ministers now are answering questions and actually looking really rattled.
Yeah, indeed, Labour MPs. Yeah. I must ask you, Tories have been a bit rattled. You know, I've got to ask you this after we've seen 3 Tory defections to the Reform Party, most notably, of course, Robert Jenrick last Thursday after being sacked by Kemi Badenoch. 2 of those being MPs, frontbenchers. Lots of talk from Nigel Farage last week that there was going to be a defection of a Labour figure, not necessarily a Labour MP, but a Labour figure. A lot of fingers pointing at you. Are you planning to, well, you're an independent peer right now, but are you planning to join Reform?
Well, I said that I was, you know, he said, I think he said something about a well-known Labour figure, and I said, well, I'm not well-known, and I'm not a Labour. I've been in the Labour Party for 8 years. I had 30 years of being in a party, supposedly following a whip. I didn't always do that. You know, I'm very happy being an independent. Yes, of course, there are an awful lot of things that I support Reform in doing, and you know, if at this moment, if in where I was living, I had a vote, I'd be voting Reform. But at the moment, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing.
Okay, so I haven't heard a no. No, I will not be joining the Reform Party.
I'm certainly not joining the Reform Party as the person that they're talking about at the moment.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Baroness Cahill. Appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. Finally got clarity on that. Just to let you know, Donald Trump has a touchdown in Zurich ahead of his speech in Davos. It's going to be roughly 2:45 UK time. It's been postponed. It was due to be about 1:30. God knows how long it'll be there, but there we are. 11:49 is time. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be talking about the latest trans-ideological madness and some brief moments of sanity. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. I thought it was almost afternoon there, but it's not yet. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining me here at Talk the Home of Common Sense. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and as you know, on the Home of Common Sense, we have regular little sessions where we talk about insanity. It's either net zero insanity or trans-ideology insanity. Every now and then we get like little glimpses of sanity. We had, of course, the Darlington nurses, the wonderful women, a whole bunch of them, who took their NHS trust to court over being required to get changed in front of a man who claimed he was a woman, but was quite clearly a man. And And yesterday we had a little bit of sanity too, where Jennifer Melley, who we discussed on Monday as well, a nurse who had referred to a trans-identified male paedophile criminal who was a patient in the hospital where she worked as Mr. How very dare she, has been allowed to keep her job in the NHS after an outpouring of support and protests even yesterday outside where she was having to basically go to a tribunal to try and keep her job. We're going to talk about that now with Susan Smith. She's director of For Women Scotland. A very good morning to you, Susan.
Morning.
Well, people will know you, of course, that great victory, that Supreme Court judgment last April, though seems an awful lot of organisations, including the government, haven't quite got to grips with that Supreme Court ruling, which seemed very straightforward when I read it. I'm sure you're thrilled. We've had the Darlington nurses last Friday winning their clear victory. Judge, hands down, absolutely no question at all. They shouldn't ever have been required to get changed with a man, whether he calls himself a woman or not, in the changing room. And yesterday, the news that Jennifer Melley is going to keep her job. But talk us through the extraordinary lengths she's had to go to be in that position.
Well, quite. I mean, we keep saying the process is the punishment, don't we? And this was a classic example that here was this really violent, horrible paedophile in a hospital, and he racially abused her, and for the crime of referring to him by his biological sex, she went through this whole lengthy, drawn-out, torturous process and could have lost her job.
Yeah, after 20-odd years of exemplary service, never one complaint, anything.
Yes. And, we've seen this so much. And in the NHS, we've seen it with the Darlington nurses, as you said, and it's brilliant. They won their case. And obviously, in their tribunal, they took on board what the Supreme Court have said. But we've had Sandy Peggy.
Yeah.
And obviously, her ruling was quite bizarre. And we're now finding out apparently the judge spoke to a judicial colleague, and this was the person who got all these citations wrong. And
they used AI to sort of make up quotes from other cases. I mean, it's quite bizarre.
Yeah. So, we have still got a long way to go. Yeah. And we really want to get to a point where these poor women are not being dragged through all this.
And this is it. It's like you guys. It's just, ordinary women just trying to do your job, trying to go about your daily lives, and you're being forced into these big court battles. And what was extraordinary about it was she was told off because she'd used her religion so she's outside the door of this violent paedophile who's in the chair, and she's having a conversation about the medical treatment he needs involving a catheter up his penis, okay? Because he's got a penis, because he's a man. So she wasn't like being rude about him or to his face. She was being very respectful, far more respectful than most of us would be willing to be about a paedophile guy who's a patient. I mean, that's testament to her credibility there and niceness. And then he launches a tirade of abuse, used the N-word against her, she's a black woman, repeatedly. And the next day she was called in for a meeting with superiors. She thought they were going to be saying, "Are you okay?" I mean, what a horrible experience. This guy was threatening her, had to be held back by the police. And instead, she was told she was suspended because she had said, "I can't refer to you as a woman because it's against my religion." And she was the one who faced disciplinary action.
And they say, the trust, don't they, that we will not tolerate racist abuse. But they didn't just tolerate it, they rewarded it.
Yeah. I mean, but he's trans-identified, in which case he gets a free pass, it would appear. And this is the absolute madness, isn't it? But there's even more madness, though. That's a little moment of sanity, eventually, but I think only because she did go public and she had help from organisations, I think, like Christian Concern to help her, defending her right to hold those perfectly legitimate views, basic on biological fact. But we've had the absurd situation. I mean, John Swinney, the SNP leader in Scotland, he's completely off the reservation when it comes to trans issues, as much as Nicola Sturgeon was. But SNP ministers yesterday argued that banning trans prisoners from women's jails, i.e. banning males who can claim they're women from women's jails, would breach the European Convention on Human Rights. They say the Equality Act did not make sex segregation between biological males and females a legal necessity. But it did, didn't it?
It did. It's like Groundhog Day. We are back to case-by-case assessment. And actually, a lot of international human rights law specifies that you have to have special provision for men and women in prison. what the Scottish government is doing is bizarre, and they're going on about these human rights of men. They seem to forget that women are also human beings. I mean, I know it's shocking. News flash for John Swinney. And we're also covered by human rights. And Article 3 says you shouldn't be subjected to degrading treatment and punishment. And that's exactly what is happening with these women now.
And it's bad enough in a toilet or a changing room. It's quite another thing when you're locked in a cell. And again, John Swinney and Nicola Sturgeon, all these ministers defending to the hilt, I mean, a hill they will die on, the right of a convicted rapist, a man who has raped a woman, to be in a cell with another woman. I mean... And I constantly ask, but is a rapist, by definition, a man? He's a criminal. No, a rapist is a criminal. You know, he's an offender. Or the rapist is. They never use the. They're really careful about their pronouns, aren't they? They won't say it. But I mean, this is the language of the madhouse.
But we've now got a new one in this note of argument they've put out that because a little boy can go into the ladies' toilet with his mum, then that means
there's an exception. There are exceptions.
For a man who stabbed someone 20-odd times to... I'm trying to work out if this means that he needs to have his mum in there with him in the prison.
Oh, please make that argument in court. But this is the thing. We all understand why, you know, toddlers, I think children up to about 6, 7, 8, you could, as a woman, you're in a changing room or a toilet, you completely expect there will be children in there. But you know, boys, but that's different because 6, 7-year-old boys aren't a threat to women. I mean, that's, you know, and they're with their mum. It is genuinely scary that these people who claim to be grown-up serious people who are running whole countries actually make these mad arguments. And you know, the sooner they're got rid of, the better. Always so great to talk to you. You've been a fantastic hero on this stuff. Susan Smith, Director of For Women Scotland. Up next, I mean, you believe it or not, it's already Wednesday. We're going to have PMQs. Benedict Spence is going to stay with me. We've also got Peter Cardwell as well in to give our analysis of, you know, Prime Minister is in the country, not at Davos. Donald Trump has arrived in Davos, hasn't got off the plane. I've never known a man take longer to get off a plane than this man. Mind you, normally Macron takes a long time, but that's because he's been beaten up by his wife. That's a completely different story entirely. Anyway, it's all coming up. We're going to talk about PMQs. We're going to talk to Richard Dearlove of MI6, formerly of MI6 as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's just 2 minutes past midday. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. It's Wednesday, so it's PMQs. Prime Minister already on his feet. We'll go live as soon as we get Kemi Badenoch up speaking. In fact, she's up already. Straight to it. So let's go straight to the House of Commons.
In particular, can I thank the Shadow Education Secretary, 61 Labour MPs, and the Greater Manchester Mayor for forcing him to think again. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and I agree. The future of Greenland should only be decided by the people of Greenland. When the Prime Minister made this point to President Trump on Monday, did the President agree or disagree?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, engaging constructively on international security matters hugely, particularly when it comes to security in the Arctic, and that's the context in which this discussion is going on in relation to Greenland. As we engage constructively, I have made my position clear on our principles and values. The first of those is that the future of Greenland is for the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The second is that threats of tariffs to pressurise allies are completely wrong. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to engage constructively. I've had many international calls in recent days, and the Prime Minister of Denmark is coming to the United Kingdom tomorrow for bilateral talks. But I do want to be clear with the House. I will not yield, Britain will not yield on our principles and values about the future of Greenland under threats of tariffs. And that is my clear position.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad to hear the Prime Minister say that. We all know that the people of Greenland do not want to be ruled by America. But does he agree that just as those in Greenland should decide their own future, so should the Chagosians?
Mr. Speaker, I've made out my position on Greenland absolutely clear on Monday and a moment ago. President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so. Given that that was his express purpose, I'm surprised the Leader of the Opposition has jumped on the bandwagon. I had understood her position, Mr. Speaker, I had understood her position to be that she supported the government's position on the future of Greenland. Now she appears to support words by President Trump to undermine the government's position on the future of Greenland. She's chosen naked opportunism over the national interest.
Mr. Speaker, we'll note that when I asked him what the President told him, he couldn't tell us. Now he expects us to believe he knows what's going on in President Trump's mind. Let me remind him, his Deputy Prime Minister, then Foreign Secretary, used to say that if President Trump didn't like the deal, it wouldn't go ahead. And let's look at what President Trump actually said. The Chagos deal is an act of great stupidity and a sign of total weakness. We didn't need President Trump to tell us that. We've been saying this for 12 months. And let's remind the Prime Minister, President Trump thought that we were doing this, that the Prime Minister is doing this for money. The Prime Minister is giving away territory we own and paying £35 billion for the privilege. Why doesn't he just scrap this terrible deal and put the money into our armed forces?
The words from President Trump were expressly intended to put pressure on me to yield on my principle. What he said about Chagos was literally in the same sentence as what he said about Greenland. That was his purpose. And the future of Greenland is a binary issue that is splitting the world at the moment with material consequences. I've been clear and consistent in my position on the future of Greenland. The future is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The Leader of the Opposition has taken 3 positions in 10 days. 10 days ago, she said Greenland was, in her words, a second-order issue. 4 days ago, she said she supported our position on Greenland. Now she's backing arguments intended to undermine our position, Britain's position on Greenland. This is an important national moment, and yet again the Leader of the Opposition has shown she is incapable of rising to it.
I've already told him we agree on Greenland. I'm asking about the Chagos deal. That money, that £35 billion, should go to the armed forces. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing. We are in a very different place, the most dangerous international environment since the end of the Cold War. Last week, the head of the armed forces, not me, the head of the armed forces warned that our military faces a £28 billion shortfall. Is he right?
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud we're spending more on defence than any time since the last Labour government. The Strategic Defence Review is back the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. That's £270 billion this Parliament, making defence an engine of growth. That is a stark contrast. Ben Wallace, the longest-serving Conservative Defence Secretary, openly admitted that under their watch our armed forces were hollowed out.
Order. Mr. Bowitt and Mr. Cartledge, it is continuous week in, week out, and there's a couple over here who will also be going out for a cup of tea with you. Please, calm it down, or you know the consequence. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they shout on a Wednesday and they defect on a Thursday. The loudest shouter used to be the former Shadow Justice. We should take a note of who's shouting most loudly this week.
Kevin Burnell.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about defections. Let me tell him that when I had someone undermining my party, I sacked him. If he sacked... Mr. Speaker, if he sacked...
We're going to get through this Prime Minister's questions. I want to hear the Leader of the Opposition and I want to hear the Prime Minister. Those who don't may leave the chamber. Kemi Bennell.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that if he sacked everyone undermining his party, his front bench would be empty. But these questions I'm asking, these questions, well, jokes aside, these questions are about our national interest. These questions are about our national interest. We support our armed forces in every possible way. Later today, my party will vote to protect our veterans from unfair prosecution. He is ordering his MPs to vote against them. In our national interest, and for the sake of all the brave people in the armed forces, past, present and future, will the Prime Minister do the right thing and vote in support of our veterans, not against them?
Mr. Speaker, she's claiming strength. She read the guy's defection letter and then at that point decided to sack him. What was she going to do? Correct the typos and give it back to him? She should have sacked him when he made disgraceful comments about faces in Birmingham, and she failed to do so. And she smiles, saying it's a good thing she's cleared out, a good thing there's fewer Tory MPs. The rest of the country agrees with her completely in relation to that. On the question of veterans' protection, under the last government, they passed legislation which was struck down, leaving our veterans utterly exposed. We're putting in place proper measures to protect them.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about leadership. Three of his own cabinet ministers told the Times on Saturday that he needed to learn from me.
Order! I'll tell you now, I'm having no more. Do we understand each other? Thank you. Can we then? No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But back to the national interest. Instead of acting in it, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just tries to get through the day. On the Chinese spy hub embassy, he's too weak. On Chagos, he's too weak. On funding for the armed forces, he's too weak. On protecting our veterans from prosecution, he's too weak. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I will support the Prime Minister when he does the right thing. But time after time, this Prime Minister has done the wrong thing for our country. Isn't the truth that he is too weak to stand up for our national interests?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've spent the week working with our NATO allies to protect our national security and ensure we have unity in NATO. That's a matter of national importance. She's utterly failed to rise to the occasion and show the solidarity she could have shown in this House. She spent the week trying to hold together what's left of the Tory party. And she says I should learn from her. She has no judgment. Only a week ago, she was saying in relation to Greenland, she shrugged and said it's some second-order issue. Terrible judgment. Then she flip-flopped with 3 different positions in 10 days on Greenland. She said Liz Truss's mini-budget was 100% right. She said last week she was 100% confident there'll be no more defections just before the latest defection. I'm beginning to think her judgment isn't 100% reliable.
Right, well, quite a feisty exchange there between Kemi Badenoch and Sir Keir Starmer there at the dispatch box for PMQs. Got to a very quick start there. Joining me in the studio, delighted to say, still is Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. I've got to be honest with you, I'd love to have the cameras on us in the studio watching that, because your face is just a picture throughout it. But also talk presenter Peter Cardwell. Very good afternoon to you as well. I'm going to come to you first, Peter. I mean, it wasn't Kemi Badenoch's strongest.
No.
I don't think she is as strong on foreign affairs, actually. Although she was bringing it back to the UK. Look, this is actually about our defence. This is about the security of our country. There's Chagos with its Chinese embassy and defence spending, veterans protections, and she brought it all together at the end. Do you think, I mean, the Prime Minister was on stronger ground there?
Maybe in part of it, although the things he didn't answer, what he didn't say was at least as important as what he did say. She asked him repeatedly about Chagos, for example. She asked him about the Chinese embassy, didn't answer that, didn't answer the 28 billion...
None of them ever answer questions.
Yeah, but even the £28 billion black hole, which the head of the army said exposed by the Times, he kept saying values and principles, values and principles, values and principles, as if
I've been clear.
I have values and principles. if he kept saying it, maybe people think he has some. You know, it is just astonishing how little light there was. There's quite a lot of heat, and certainly I think towards the end it got feistier, but not one of her vintage performances.
No, I thought it was all the attacks were really quite personal, weren't they, Benedict? Yeah. It was about the character of the man, the character of the woman. Prime Minister started off talking about Greenland. She said, you know, we agree with you on Greenland. Did the President, the US President, when he spoke to him, agree or disagree with you? And he said 3 times, we engaged constructively.
Oh. Honestly, it's like listening to an accordion made of treacle that's been left out in the sun. You don't get anything. Even when he answers the question, you're not quite sure what he said because it's so dull to get to the end point. You're right, Kemi Badenoch didn't have a particularly incisive one, PMQs. But ultimately, it's the really unimpressive way with which he evades the question. She was asking repeatedly, quite clearly, what is it that he has to say about the Chagos Islands? You know, what are you going to do about that? He's been quite clear. And he wasn't even going full-throated at the start on, oh, well, he only sort of pivots, Donald Trump only pivots based on what suits him, because of course he can't say that, because he still holds out hope that at some point he's going to go back to being the Trump whisperer. So he just ignores the question and seems to pretend that actually that question is irrelevant and that it's only about trying to undermine the government. Nobody's buying that. No. It was painful.
And also, by the way, it was Mark Rutte as the Trump whisperer, the NATO Secretary General.
That's only because he calls him Daddy. It's weird.
There's no I can't believe for a nanosecond that Donald Trump and Keir Starmer have anything in common, anything worth saying. Keir Starmer is not I mean, you know, it's not like, oh, behind the scenes he's a great conversationalist conversationalist. I mean, trust me, you know. But it was just interesting that the Prime Minister kept replying, didn't he, Peter, about, you know, he was saying, you know, Kemi Badenoch was saying about the people of Greenland, you know, well, what about the same for the Chagosians?
Yeah, it's a perfectly fair point.
Yes.
About,
we all care about self-determination.
You either care about self-determination or you don't, and he's
exactly.
contradicting himself on that.
And the Prime Minister got quite tetchy, very unlike Keir Starmer when questioned, basically saying, you know, very different words yesterday over Chagos to what the President has said before, but he's basically saying, look, he's only criticising over Chagos, which the White House was signed off before anyway, because they've got Diego Garcia military base there in the Indian Ocean, and he's only doing this because trying to put pressure on me over Greenland. He kept saying repeatedly, you know, he is not going to give in to this tariff threat. I think he probably is going to give in to the tariff threat, to be honest with you. But I mean, he went, I mean, quite a long way. Again, when you're dealing with the man-baby Donald Trump, and I'm sorry, he is being a man-baby about Nobel Peace Prizes and things like that, the Prime Minister, should Trump see those comments, might be a bit unhappy about them. He might not have done himself any good.
Yes, I think so. Starmer has certainly been stronger in regard to Trump than he has been recently, and he wasn't mincing his words there, and that is perhaps a sign of strength, but we'll see what happens when it comes to the tariffs. He accused Kemi Badenoch of undermining him. Well, that's her job. Her job is to undermine him, not about the national interest. But he said, well, Trump was talking about Chagos to undermine him, and Kemi Badenoch, you're a terrible person because you leapt on that. I mean, that is her job. Her job is to undermine him.
I'm always very wary, actually, when people say there's cross-party consensus on something. I always think,
if there's a consensus, it is wrong.
Yeah, it's against, no one's thought about it, and they're doing it because it'll sound nice. That always worry me. They're always, even when you care about the national interest and you care about defence of our realm and our interests abroad, there's always room for differences in how you go about that, aren't there, Benedict?
There are, and I think that the Chagos thing also, I know that Keir Starmer would really like it to just disappear one day, but it's not going to, and it is for such a small, you know, overseas territory.
Yeah.
It has taken
when it first came into the news, we were all Googling where's the Chagos Islands. Give me a break.
I wasn't.
I know you weren't. That's why we invited you.
But this is the point. It was an unknown thing, and it has become an on-running saga precisely because anybody with a brain and two eyes can look at it. Not even two eyes. You know, people with one eye can see that this is a bad idea. That the whole idea of it being, you know, mandated by international law isn't in fact true, and that they're doing this ultimately because of their own ideological reasons, which is that they think Britain is a bad place and shouldn't have overseas territories. That's ultimately why they're doing this, because they care more about the rules-based international order and the international community, which doesn't give a hoot about them, even if it did. Yeah. And this is the thing. And the fact that it might take a really, you know, a temperamental US president who can change his mind on a dime to actually be the thing that tells the British government, you people are half-wits and you shouldn't be doing that, what does that say about the state of affairs that we currently get ourselves into? This government is done. Stick a fork in it, it's done. It's not going to win the next election unless by some miracle it managed to pull together a lefty, wacky coalition with all sorts of other people to prop it up.
And the Tories
he is not going to be the Prime Minister again.
No,
we can all see it. It's simply because,
dead man walking.
It's simply because somehow he is stuck in this dreadful situation where his MPs can't get rid of him, he can't get rid of his MPs, nobody likes each other, and there is no mechanism
and we're
to get
stuck
rid
with
of
him as well. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, lots of people thinking he'd be gone, you know, after local elections, and you think, you know, après-moi le deluge. I mean, could get Ed Miliband, and you know, Andy Burnham's not yet an MP. I mean, you know, there's all this talk, and again, same with Kemi Badenoch, the whole sort of, oh, she'll be gone after the next election. Well, actually, it looked like with her going up in the polls, she's now narrowly ahead on net unfavourability. It's not it's net minus favourability ratings above Nigel Farage now. I mean, I've been saying for a long time, people say, oh, it's definitely going to be a reform government. Yeah, if I had to put my home on it, and you have to put your home on a definite outcome, yeah, I would say that, or a coalition. But I still think we have no idea what's going to happen in the next few years. We don't know what Donald Trump is going to do 10 minutes time, for goodness sake. I don't know if he's got off his plane at Davos yet. The man who takes longer getting off a plane than anyone in the world. But I mean, you know, we've no idea what's going to happen next.
Well, if you said 6 months ago, well, Greenland is going to be the issue that dominates PMQs and political discourse for weeks, no one would have believed you. We don't know what's around the corner. 3.5 years is a very long period of time. I would be surprised if Keir Starmer is still Prime Minister at that stage, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there's a Labour, Liberal, Democrat coalition after the next election. I think that is the underpriced aspect of this.
God, of the Greens.
I think with the Greens possibly.
Your party.
I think it's underpriced.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
underpriced.
that's the thing. I do think, yeah, exactly. Just whatever. If you remember, I mean, I actually remember, in 2010 with this coalition, it's the end of two-party politics, and then two-party politics came by, and then when Boris Johnson got in, he's going to be there for 10 years.
Fifth term.
Corbyn, that big, the loss. Corbyn's gone. It's going to be two or three terms before Labour come back in with a massive majority. Guys, all the experts, those commentators, the experts who keep telling us this is how it's going to be. You don't know, and we don't know. I say we don't know what Donald Trump is going to say in a couple of hours' time. God forbid what it's going to be. Let's talk about what's going on back here, though, because an awful lot of people are not going to be getting a council election. They're not going to get to vote. Some people are going to be basically waiting 7 years in total. I mean, councillors are going to be in office for a total of 7 years. We've got this right for now a legal challenge from Reform UK, because, of course, most of the councils sort of said, well, actually, we are reorganising, Prime Minister, and you're quite right. We probably don't really have the organisation ability to run elections and stand up, walk and chew gum at the same time. So we're going to cancel them. And it just happens to be mostly Labour councils or a Tory council or a Lib Dem council who think they're going to lose all their seats. Do we think for a nanosecond that any council or government would allow any council to cancel elections if they thought Labour were going to do well?
It's a very fair point. It's very interesting with this legal action as well. There may well be a speeding up. The government, of course, wanted to push it, unsurprisingly, until after the local elections will be held.
Yeah, how does that work?
I was speaking to someone very senior in Reform UK yesterday. He gave me a bit of a steer on this and said, look, we are absolutely clear we want these elections to happen. We're going to push this. There was a partial victory in the High Court yesterday. I think we could see some sort of legal
we have to wait
U-turn
until
on this.
mid-February, though, to the actual court hearing.
Yeah, that's right. So, but still, there could, in theory, be a court order that the elections all happen in May.
How serious do you think this is, Benedict? We've discussed it briefly on the show already, but I mean, my thing is, given that this was done under a law, which basically was for, in wartime, and pandemics. Again, I don't see why, given that Americans could hold an entire presidential election during the middle of COVID in America, why we couldn't hold local elections in our time here. But if they get away with it this time, there is no reason why they could cancel or delay a general election. People think, that's nonsense. I'm sorry, the principle will have been established.
Yeah, I think it's not nonsense, but it does make it more likely that inevitably when the election is held, that Labour will lose it more badly than they might otherwise have done. Because I think with the local elections, look, it was likely that Reform were going to do very well in them, still potentially could. But then, at the very least, those Reform councillors are in place, and then the onus is on them to actually try to change things. It also increases the opportunity, of course, that they'll be very bad at their jobs. But by not having the elections at all, lots of people who might have been sort of not particularly motivated but irritated by the way things are going on are suddenly going to be going, oh, hang on, you're actually not letting me change this. That will focus a lot more minds than if they'd held the elections and lost them and it was a little bit embarrassing in the short term.
Absolutely. Just finally, Peter Caldwell, Keir Starmer not due to go to Davos. Pretty much everyone who matters in the world is going to be there, including the leader of the free world, Donald Trump, what's left of the free world, rapidly dwindling. Do you think that even though he does get a lot of criticism for gallivanting around the world, never hear Keir, that actually this is the one time we really should be in Davos?
Well, he certainly wants to be a world statesman and wants to kind of lean into that. But I do think the kind of conversations that Donald Trump will be having will be very different to the rhetoric in the White House yesterday. We'll see at this speech at 1:30 and what he says there.
Well, no, it's moved. It's going to be at least an hour later. Yeah, because of that delayed flight.
The plane, apologies. And certainly when it comes to those face-to-face meetings or face-to-aviator meetings with Emmanuel Macron, I do think those kind of conversations will be a little bit softer and maybe something will get done. Starmer should be there.
I mean, given that problems with electoral problems with Air Force One, they've got an Air Force Two, which becomes Air Force One when the
call sign changes when the president's on it.
Apparently they were on another plane entirely. I don't understand.
But Trump also has his own plane separate to all of this.
Of course. And there's that one the Qataris are giving him.
But the call sign changes when the president goes on.
Elon might buy an airline in the meantime.
Yeah, I'm always flying on JHB1. Everyone knows that. Wherever cheap budget airline I'm on. Talking of which, have you been following these fun and games between Elon Musk and RyanAir boss Michael O'Leary?
The tweets.
I mean, it's just wonderful. Elon Musk basically is cross that Michael O'Leary decided not to have his Starlink contraptions, which apparently way too much, for allow people to make calls in the air. I don't want people making phone calls in the air. It's bad enough on trains and buses. People FaceTiming each other. Oh, good Lord, could you have some time not on a phone, people? But Elon Musk got very upset about this and is now talking about buying the airline. What's it? 35 24 billion or something. I mean, that's just changed down the back of the sofa for Elon.
Trillionaire.
But the crucial thing is he wants to change the boss of RyanAir to someone called Ryan.
I mean, I think that's a good idea.
You've got a lot. Michael O'Leary has done a press conference today, hasn't he, Benedict, pointing out that this has been absolutely great for business. RyanAir, everyone's all over that, giving them more. Yeah. We're talking about, every time we talk about them, people go on their website and they book seats.
I was going to say, the more Elon talks about it, he pushes the share price up. It makes it more expensive for himself to do it. But I would love to see him actually get a hold of a budget airline like that. Given what has happened with Twitter, which is, let's put it this way, it's been wild. It's been a ride. Yeah. But given that actually, you know, he might not be very good with social media, but do you know one thing he does do quite well, his people do quite well, is aerodynamics and engineering. He's actually quite good at that. I think it could be really exciting.
This is true.
Can I briefly point out that the first time someone messaged me using Wi-Fi on a plane was Jeremy Kyle on his honeymoon. He was literally on his honeymoon, going to his honeymoon on the plane. So and I was like, are you on the plane sitting beside your new wife on your honeymoon messaging me on the plane? He was like, yeah.
Okay, we have to ask at this point, what was the message about?
It was just like work gossip. It was just like, seriously, Jeremy, focus on the woman you just married.
Not like JK and Peter to have a gossip and work. Totally out of character.
Our business is information, Julia. Our business is information.
I'm going to go to a break now. I'm done with these two. Up next, we're going to be talking to a man who knows something. No, we're going to be talking to the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dillon. What does he make of what's going on? Big thanks to Peter Cobble. Are you on later?
4 o'clock.
I lose track of everyone moving around. Benedict back with me as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, indeed, the home of common sense for me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and the home of top guests who know what they are talking about, rather more than I think is being talked about, all the hot air, not in this studio, Benedict Spence smirking there, but in the PMQs, which is still ongoing. But let's talk to a man who absolutely knows what is really going on when it comes to our defence and our security. Big issues at PMQs, big issues in the public debate right now, and that's the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dillon. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you've managed to take in some of PMQs. You've probably got, rather better things to do with your time. I don't know, maybe taking a nap or anything else but better than that. But big debates between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition about our national security when it comes to things like the Chinese embassy, when it comes to Greenland, when it comes to the Chagosians, when it comes to treatment of our veterans and our spending on defence. Look, you've been at the heart of our defence, many, many years, our national security. Which is the biggest threat right now?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the biggest long-term threat is China. And we've had Ken McCallum, the Director General of the Security Service, standing up and saying that pretty clearly on several occasions. We have a specific problem with the Russians, of course, which is much more, let's say, European, but that is a threat. And yeah, we're in a state of almost grey warfare with Russia at the moment.
Well, that's the thing. People say, look, we're not at war. We don't want to go to war, but there is a kind of, it's not a cold war, it's not a hot war, but it's something in between, isn't it? Coming back to China, when you talk about the biggest long-term threat, what exactly is that threat? What is the issue with, for instance, the Chinese getting, as they did yesterday, the go-ahead for that Chinese mega embassy? We know about there's concerns about them spying. We know about all these redacted plans and what are they going to be doing in these rooms? Could they be used as prison cells, torture cells? We know about these cables, vital communication cables to the city. We've got all of that information, but what is the actual specific threat that China poses to us that could be, for instance, made worse by them having that mega embassy?
Well, I think that the problem with Chinese, or the communist Chinese intelligence, is it has a systematic threat of intellectual property. And it has always, as it were, promoted its own economy by having a significant program which is aimed at almost any nation to pinch intellectual property and to use that to develop their own economy.
So we have all the ideas, we develop that stuff, and then they pinch it, and then they sell it to, they make it and sell it to us cheaply.
Pretty much. That sounds like they create economic dependencies to put your businesses out of business, and by selling cheap on the international market, so they knock out all the competitors. So there's a lot of espionage activity which is, let's say, economically driven.
Yeah.
But we've seen recently, for example, more interference in our political affairs, the suborning of these two young sort of advisors in Parliament, Berry and Cash. Okay, the cases were dropped, but I think those of us who understand are pretty clear that there was a significant Chinese intelligence operation to recruit these two guys. We had a further example of that in that lady, Christine Lee, who was running sort of influence operations in Parliament without declaring who she was. I mean, you can go on listing this stuff. They're very active in the cyber domain, hacking, and they've become more aggressive in what I would call traditional espionage, stealing national secrets. There's lots of examples of that. And I mean, the problem is that we don't know about some of the cases because they're not publicized.
Yeah.
McCallum, the head of the Security Service, has said quite clearly there's been a range of activity.
Yeah.
And the government talks about some of it gets into the public domain. But look, it's clearly a huge problem. And I mean, it's one that's been growing over time. I mean, when I was in office, we were worried about China, but they were not so aggressive. They were not so sophisticated. They hadn't moved, as it were, into the first division of espionage.
No, indeed. They don't seem to be sort of, worried about people even knowing about it now. It's rather blatant. As you say, the political interference, I mean, we know about, Russian bots and Iranian-funded bots and Chinese bots trying to sort of steer conversations, steering debate, interfering on our politics. When you talk about the threat from Russia, you say that's a European threat. That is... Well, China is not talking about China's not going to invade Europe or invade Britain or anything like that. But is Russia a threat, a genuine geographical threat?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're fighting, well, the Ukrainians are fighting a major war on the European continent. What's amazing is that war actually has been largely contained, but there's huge Russian activity against those European countries who are supporting the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
There have been a host of examples of factories being burnt down, interference with sea cables. I mean, you can list all the stuff. This is Russian intelligence, and I mean, the Russians don't really appear to be too concerned about political risk and being caught out now. We've had that case of a Bulgarian Russian-run spying in the UK.
Yeah.
Look, I could put up a list or a graphic which would show you like 40 or 50 locations in Western Europe where the Russians have been boldly active. They've planned an assassination against some German businessman who was running a big armaments company in Germany.
So there's a lot of activity from, basically hostile actors around the world. Is the West up to it? There's a lot of talk about, Donald Trump saying, look, with NATO and otherwise internationally, Europeans aren't paying their way. They're not able to defend their own continent, let alone contribute to help the US or even to help, say, Greenland. In terms of Trump's actions and threats over Greenland, the threats that many are perceiving of the breakup of the NATO-Western alliance, how big a threat is that to us and to our future security and indeed, economic security as well?
Well, putting aside the Greenland issue, Trump initially has done us a good turn in forcing the European nations, and including the UK, to up their defence spending. Why on earth should American taxpayers pay for the cost of defending Europe, whilst we have really indulgent social security programs and will not pay for our own defence? That problem is in the process of being solved. I say in the process because, if you take the UK, Starmer has said, increase defence spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2037. Or 2035, that's not fast enough. We need to do it now. We need to go up to 5%. We need to cut the welfare bill. Look, the first duty of the state is the defence and security of the country.
And have people like you and senior figures in the military, a lot of people speak out when they leave office, and again, oftentimes they're not able to speak out while they're in office. But our senior figures, and it seems to me again and again, everybody, whether the Defence Secretary, senior civil servant, or a figure like yourself, former head of MI6, are pressuring the government. Again, government after government after government saying you're not taking this long-term threat seriously, because you can't just go and buy a fighter jet just over there. It appears, Amazon deliver it a week later. These things take years. They cost huge sums of money. You need to have a coherent strategy for helping our allies, but also defending the national realm itself. When you and others have been telling government after government of different political colours, you need to take this seriously, the Cold War dividend is over, you've got to get with the programme, what is the response? Is it, I don't care? Is it, I don't believe you? Is it, we can't afford it? What is it?
Well, the government talk a reasonably good talk in recognising the problem. Recognising the problem is a first step, but they've then got to actually start spending serious sums of money, which, of course, they feel they haven't got at the moment because they're going to have to cut other areas of government expenditure. The most obvious one is the welfare bill. I can't remember what percentage it is of young people who are, who are claiming
far too many.
But it's ridiculously high. And, the trouble is that Starmer is the prisoner of a left wing of his party, and they will not countenance accelerated defence expenditure now. We need to follow the Polish example. The Poles, who are on the front line, have increased their expenditure to 5%, and they've been spending now for well over a year, and they're building up a serious military capability. I was talking to someone the other day, the whole of the British Armed Forces could sit inside the Manchester United football stadium. 70,000 people. It's just, we need boots on the ground, we need equipment, we need a serious programme. I'm in favour of conscription, or a type of conscription, because we have to build up the armed forces. And young people need to come to terms with the fact, the seriousness of the situation that the country is in. Look, we're in a really tough place, and it isn't about the National Health Service. This is more serious, much more serious. Health is partly, a personal responsibility. Defence is a national responsibility and a government responsibility.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking so plainly. I wish our politicians were listening more closely. Sir Richard Diller, former head of MI6. Benedict Spence, I always love speaking to Sir Richard. He never minces his words. You just know he would have been saying this sort of stuff to governments, again, at various different political views. They ain't listening. Spending money on defence ain't sexy in British politics because there's always another nurse you could be funding.
Oh, of course. But at the same time, talking about things like conscription is for the birds, because even if you were to bring it in, nobody would sign up and people wouldn't do it.
You don't get a choice.
How many soldiers has he just said we have in this country? How many police officers? Who's going to enforce that? Honestly, if you don't have a social contract,
we haven't got the prison places to put them in.
If you don't have the social contract to actually motivate people
most of the rest of Europe,
they won't do it.
Most of the rest of Europe, they have these sort of sort of national service. It's completely the norm.
It's deeply more ingrained.
You've got to care about your country.
Yeah, it is deeply ingrained, and we have to say a lot of those countries, their attitudes towards things like immigration or citizenship would be deemed racist by even the Conservative Party in this country. Look at a country like Italy, which doesn't even give you citizenship if you're born in that country. You have to take a citizenship test at 18 or 21. That is in fact the norm.
Really? If you're born to Italian parents? Really?
No, not Italian parents. If you are foreign...
in this country, we don't give citizenship if you're born here.
Yes, we do.
No, we don't.
Yes, we absolutely do.
No,
it's incredibly easy to do so.
No, you do not get automatic citizenship because you're born here. You don't.
If your parents are naturalised.
If your parents are British citizens, yes. If your parents are foreigners, you can be born here, but you don't get British citizenship.
Your parents have taken citizenship, though. Yeah, no, it's not the same in Italy. It's not the same.
Okay.
And it's not the same across a lot of Europe. But the point is, also, one last thing, he's not talking about drones. We need drone manufacturing.
Yeah, but that will be part of the spending. Yeah, 12:42 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Lots of things to talk about. You get to choose what you call in about. We'll take those calls next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. Let's go straight to your calls. James is in Staffordshire. James, you want to talk about this extraordinary spending on benefits, which is interesting, that Richard Dearlove touched on. What do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. I've had a real epiphany because Ian Collins the other day was on about that 18% of people think Starmer's doing a good job.
I know.
And for everything that was holy and sacred, I could not figure out where these 18%... Because I thought, well, there's not enough train drivers.
Yep.
There's not enough junior doctors. And then when you said this figure this morning, the light dawned. So I've had my epiphany, and it's 1.8 million of people who are sitting watching daytime TV and eating hobnobs.
Well, yeah, it's which is, by the way, a lovely way of spending a day. A day like this. No, it must be. If you're a public sector worker or if you're on benefits, you absolutely would go, I think Starmer's doing a great job, thanks. I do absolutely sod all, and I get paid for it, whether I'm a public sector worker or I'm on benefits.
So it's good that I finally solved that particular puzzle, because I can't see anybody else.
No, I'm not even sure Starmer's own family would.
Yeah, can you imagine a coalition between the Fruit and Nut Party, the Hypnotits, and the Labour Party was just... I mean, we may as well just give up now.
Well, I'll say to people, if you don't use your vote, you don't get a say. James, great call. Thank you very much. Let's go to Mark, who's in Glasgow. Mark, you want to talk about all these cancelled local elections, don't you?
Yeah, I do. By the way, great show this morning. It's wonderful to watch you lot arguing amongst each other. Because you're the only channel that does that kind of stuff these days.
Well, we do our best.
Lefties and righties and centrists.
We do our best.
Anyway, to my mind, there is no doubt watching Starmer and the endless flow of lies, half-truths and gaslighting that comes out of Labour's machine. I can only believe that having cancelled for 1 year the local elections, and then having come back and cancelled for a second year, this is a dry run for them creating some form of national emergency. They will play that game. They'll create riots in the streets, whether it's the rape gangs or something else. They'll create something, the farmers. They'll call it and say, No, we're going to have to cancel the general election.
Well,
for a couple
and
of
with the
years.
media's help, by the way, because the media were trying to pretend it was a national emergency because some people got flu 2 weeks earlier than they normally do a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, they were literally, the media, I'm looking at the figures, I was talking to experts, they're all going, this is just an early flu season. It's just what it's just normal.
Yeah, well, global warming has been debunked. Yet I'm up in Glasgow, and yet we have their entire programme the council is about facing up to global warming. There isn't any, guys. Can we start spending money on keeping the stores alive and the streets working and parking spaces available? But no, none of that. Thank you very much. We'll commit economic suicide, close all the shops down, and then say we've tick that green box. Aren't we good?
Oh, aren't we good? Aren't we good indeed? Anything that makes Ed Miliband happy, you know, is definitely bad for the country. Mark in Glasgow, thank you very much indeed. 12:46 is the time. Let's tell you right now about how you could be in with a chance of winning a trip of a lifetime to San Francisco. Talk is giving away flights, a 3-night stay at a 4-star Intercontinental Hotel and £2,500 spending money, plus tickets to the Super Bowl to top it all off. Listen to find out how you can enter.
For your chance to win, text TALK to 8338. Text costs £2.50 plus your standard network rate, or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 22nd January 2026, 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus, UK residents only. This is a network promotion. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 8338 now.
You do not want to miss out on that trip of a lifetime. A very good luck to you. Up next, we're going to be talking about whether or not we get new police officers. We should actually put the bobbies on the beat rather than behind desks. I wonder what you think. Our next guest will think about that. He's Peter Blexley. He's up next. This is Talk. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 12:50 is the time. Donald Trump has arrived in Zurich ahead of his speech to Davos in Switzerland. Prime Minister has just finished PMQs. Don't know whether he's going to be jetting off there as well. But there's plenty more going on at home. We've talked about local elections being cancelled. We've talked about that Chinese super embassy. We've talked about special education needs. But let's talk about now, police officers on the front line, because the number of frontline police officers hit its lowest level for 6 years. Shabana Mahmood, the relatively new Home Secretary, is preparing to put dozens of chief constables out of a job by amalgamating a whole bunch of, I think it's 43 different police services into far fewer. But she's also going to tell the police, when you do get new police officers, it would be a good idea to put them on the beat rather than behind desks. Well, let's talk about this with former Metropolitan Police Detective Peter Blexley. A very good afternoon to you, Peter.
Good afternoon to you too.
Thank you for joining us. I have to say, I mean, we've been told so much about how Tories put bobbies back on the beat and Labour recruiting a load of bobbies. I think that's part of their manifesto commitments. How come we're at a 6-year low in the number of police officers?
Because some 20 or 30 years ago, clowns masquerading as senior police officers fell into the clutches of academics who told them police officers patrolling the beat is ineffective. And that's because basically those academics knew nothing about policing. Yep. They knew nothing about the value of public engagement, gathering intelligence, information, knowing a community, knowing a neighbourhood.
Because there isn't a tick box exercise there, so it didn't make sense to them.
Absolutely. There's not a spreadsheet you can fill out to prove the effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
So what's happened is later generations, this current generation of clowns masquerading as senior police officers, still believe that. They still perpetuate it. And of course, those senior police officers only sit behind desks anyway. They have an utter disconnect from what's really going on the front line of policing. And they do not understand the real value of having a police officer who is known to a community, trusted within that community, readily contactable, and somebody that you can trust. So you can whisper into their ear, do you know what? Little Johnny at number 43 goes out at night and burgles houses.
Yeah, but even just, patrolling the streets, and when a shoplifter is there, the police you can run outside and go, hey, copper, can you come and get this guy? Oh, instead of waiting 2 days for someone to, let's face it, not turn up. Seems very, very obvious, doesn't it? I mean, Shabana Mahmood, a lot of people are saying, oh, she seems to get it. She says all the right things, the Home Secretary. But at the end of the day, we don't really see much action. She's relatively new to the job. We know that. I trust her rather more than I would trust Yvette Cooper. But where are you in terms of her handling of the Craig Guildford case, the West Midlands police officer, or the chief constable, who's, abject lies, failings, just cover up. Just frankly, in my view, criminal behaviour over the banning of fans from Maccabi Tel Aviv from watching that match against Aston Villa last November. He's allowed to retire. I was driving when I saw the news, heard the news that he was allowed to retire with his full pension on Friday, and I have to say, I slammed on the brakes. I was so furious about that. But we're told now he could possibly face question. There could be a probe into what's happened. But has she been strong enough on that? Because she don't have talk the talk. Is she actually walking the walk when it comes to, honesty and integrity in the police, and in particular protecting every single one of our communities and people in this country, particularly Jews?
Well, let me talk about the broader policing aspect than Shabana Mahmood to start with, if I may. Talk's cheap, policing's expensive. Yeah. So she can say whatever she wants. She has to back that up by obtaining the funding from central government to then deploy to police services for them to spend. Yeah. But of course, some of these idiots that are in charge of policing, I wouldn't trust to handle those budgets, because as we see here, they don't actually trust the fundamentals. They don't know and appreciate the core subjects of policing, which is what the public want, the public deserve, and the public very much need at the moment. Getting on to Craig Guildford, this was the second time he'd retired as Chief Constable of West Midlands Police. He retired some months ago so that he could collect his huge commutation and his pension. He had a couple of weeks off work and then came back into the same role. Yeah. So he was claiming his pension and getting his huge salary at the same time.
In the same role?
Yes, nice work if you can get it. So he was put in finance before investigating crime, shall we say. So anyway, his shameful behaviour on that really tells a very much deeper story now about the Police and Crime Commissioner and those in power. Because the investigation and the announcement of an investigation has come after his retirement. It's utterly shameful. This is why people do not trust the establishment. You get retirement, which is just packaged up as an escape tunnel through which he's able to scurry.
And it shouldn't be a get-out clause for being investigated anyway. But my view is you shouldn't be allowed to retire from the police while there is a question mark over your integrity. I'm sorry, it's not a matter for debate whether or not he made up evidence and he lied to the Select Committee, the Home Affairs Select Committee of the Commons. We did it on full camera in front of our eyes. There were lies told. It was his mouth that did it. I don't know what's up for debate there.
Well, I think what is up for debate is, did Craig Guildford commit the criminal offence of misconduct in public office? That is what needs to be investigated. It is a crime, possibly, what he did. Certainly to lie in that situation. Imagine if a police constable, a sergeant, an inspector had blatantly sat down and lied to a parliamentary committee. What would have happened? They would have been facing a gross misconduct panel at the very least.
And it's the same as lying to court. It's the same thing. It really is the same thing. And again, they shouldn't be lying in any case at all. It is extraordinary, but we're told there's going to be this big reorganisation of the police forces, having fewer chief constables. I mean, I'm not quite sure that's the solution to the problems we've got. Briefly, Peter, what do you think the solution is?
There's a precedent set in Scotland when in 2013 their 8 forces amalgamated into one, into Police Scotland. At the moment, a deputy chief constable is suspended. Another deputy chief constable has proven to lie to a murder victim's family. They're not exactly getting everything right north of the border, so that precedent might not be the one to follow, although there are arguments in favour of it.
Peter, thank you for that. Peter Blexley, former Metropolitan Police Detective, always tells it as it is. Benedict Spence, listening to all of that. I mean, leaving aside the sort of Bob's bit, clearly you need police to be available and not just sitting behind a desk. And by the way, if they're all just sitting behind a desk, could they answer emails and answer phone calls more often? But what do you make of Shabana Mahmood generally as Home Secretary?
I think, well, it couldn't have been much worse given what she actually inherited. I don't think she's been too bad, but she's not, you know, there was this sort of suggestion that she was going to revolutionise things and it was going to be so much different. Actually, if nothing else, the Home Office can't be revolutionised. It can't be changed, certainly not by one person. I think that she's done a decent enough job of treading water, but we're not going to see fundamental change under her. I think we're going to hear somebody who continues to talk tough, and very often down the line we'll find out was not as tough as perhaps we expected. The same was said of Priti Patel. She was going to be a hard person and she was going to...
but she had a Home Office absolutely working against her, didn't she?
That is true.
But I have a feeling that Home Office, again, as Blair's discovered, the Home Office just works against everybody, because it doesn't, well, I say works in the loosest possible sense of the word. It's
on benefits, basically, whatever it's doing.
Exactly. Maybe it's all the people at Home Office. I think Keir Starmer's doing a good job, but they don't have to do anything. But there we are. Benedict Spence, pleasure to have you company. Thank you so much for joining us today. Covered a lot of ground at home and abroad. I'd like to say Ian Collins is here right now.
Just on that point, there was a great interview with Michael Howard where he said when he was Home Secretary, he went in there, the permanent secretary and all the head honchos of the civil service came to him in his office, Home Secretary, we're here to tell you this is the state of crime. They showed him a big graph with what crime looked like, and we want to inform you right now there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And he thought, what the hell have I walked into? How can that be your philosophy? You're guiding the Home Secretary and telling him there's nothing you can do.
And you know what he did? He started getting more people arrested, more people prosecuted.
More people in jail.
Put in prison.